Welcome to the Calder Farmstead, your place for news, analysis, and shenanigans from the American Hockey League.
Face off one by the Condors. Jones top. Other point Benson to the slot. A shot is gone. Josh Perry. In double.
Left point long drive. Shane Kiwanis. What a stop by Matisse with the left pad. Oh, there was a scramble in front of the net. Denied was Matt Schichter by a miraculous piece of net binding by Matisse Kiwanis.
Later from the red line sends it in. Hofer into his net. He stops it. Hofer looking. Hofer firing toward the empty net. He scores! Are you kidding me? Joel Hofer, a goalie goal in the Calder Cup playoffs.
And now, with 9 minutes gone in overtime, the Bears breaking out. Right side with Fair. Brooks Light cutting to the net. Fair and let's go! He scored! He scored! It's over!
Hello from Stockton, California. Welcome to the Calder Farmstead Podcast, episode number 115 for Tuesday, October 18th, 2022. If you were hoping for a podcast featuring road safety tips for tractors, I'm not going to be much help. This is an American Hockey League podcast, and my name is Sean O'Brien from StatsTrack and the AHL's only league-wide analytics guy. Thank you for tuning in with us. And if you're new to tuning in with us, what is usually Cece and I talk about hockey here, but we're today going to preview the AHL's Pacific Division for the upcoming 22-23 season. We both watch a lot of hockey and are going to talk about what we see when we watch the film, as well as use some advanced analytics to help us break it down. If that's new to you, you may want to head over to our podcast feed or YouTube channel, wherever you're listening to us from, and check out episode 0. It's a short primer on some of the stats we're going to be talking about, as well as how we view what's important on the ice. So if you're new to some of the more advanced hockey stats terms like PDO or the point shares model, or newer hockey terms like controlled zone entries, you may want to go check that out, so you better be able to pick up what we're putting down. I promise it's not that nerdy or technical. It's only 20 minutes. And let's be honest, you wasted 20 minutes celebrating Eminem's birthday. Don't look at how old he is. It will only cause you pain. You'll never get that time back. So next time, why not spend a little more time with us talking hockey? We do have a little bit of news and notes to cover before we begin here. As you may have noticed, you're only hearing me and not Cece. If you haven't already heard, Cece is taking a leave of absence from the podcast to take some time to address some things in his own life. The podcast will undergo some changes, but we will not be taking a hiatus. The plan isn't to have me run it solo either, but some changes in format and structure are coming. So when those details are finalized, you guys will be the first to know. You may also realize that this Pacific Division preview is late. The AHL's opening weekend came and went, and all 10 Pacific Division teams have already started the season. That being said, I apologize for the preview being late. The previous 3 divisions we covered went a little rougher than I anticipated, and my day job is one that is cyclical. Right now is the busiest time of our year, and on top of that, researching and recording a Pacific Division with 10 teams in it turned out to be too much for me to handle. It's ready now, and while it isn't quote-unquote on time, it's still full of all the details and insights you'd expect from our podcast. We aren't just rating you box scores, heights, weights, and guys' hockey DB resume here. We dive deeper and give you more, but sometimes that takes time. All that being said, let's get this show on the road. I am flying solo here, but we are going to do our best to not make it as awkward as possible. And by we, I mean only me. It is just me. So let's start, as always, as we've done for all the division previews. We're going top to bottom by last year's standings, which means we are starting with the newly minted Calgary Wranglers that were the division champions last year as the Stockton Heat. Their 21-22 record as the Stockton Heat is 45-23. That was first place in the Pacific Division. Their coaching staff is head coach Mitch Love, who is 45-23 as an AHL head coach, 1 playoff appearance, 2-1 in AHL playoff series. His assistant coaches are Joe Sorella and Dan Nachbauer. The additions to the Wranglers this year, technically they're all additions, but go with me here. The additions from last year's Stockton team: Clark Bishop, Ben Jones, Cole Schwint, Mitch McLean, Brent Sutter, Simon Levine, Rhett Reinhardt, Josh Brook, Oscar Dance Revolution, and Radim Zahorna. The subtractions: Dmitry Zavgorodny, Etu Tuola, Ryan Olson, Glenn Gaudin, Byron Fraze, Justin Kirkland, Luke Philp, Mark Simpson, Greg Morrow, Johannes Schinval, Kevin Graval, and Adam Varner. So let's start this preview breaking down the top 6 forwards for Stockton this year as we see them. We're going to start with Matthew Phillips. Phillips' offensive game can be described in 2 very simple words: NHL caliber. He has high-end playmaking vision with solid puck skills. He's a good but not great shooter. His offense comes more from where he shoots than raw shooting talent. Phillips finds soft ice in high danger areas that increases his chances of his shot finding the net. What keeps Phillips in the AHL is his skating. His speed and ability to fly through the neutral zone is below average and needs improvement if he's ever going to become an NHL regular. For however long he's in a Wranglers jersey, though, he's going to be an offensive force, but it wouldn't shock me to see Calgary give him some looks this season as they have in the past. Connor Zary had a respectable but not great season for Stockton. He didn't get the top 6 role last season that we were hoping for, but was still a staple of the power play and was very productive in his 5-on-5 minutes. Should Zary take on a bigger role this season, his skill set looks ready to take off. He's a very good sniper. He has playmaking vision and puck skills that are well above AHL average. He's also a very smart forward. He reads the play well, positions himself well away from the puck. The problem has always been his skating. He lacks the power and burst to really threaten defenders with speed or to play with a high pace. Zary should still be a solid producer this year, and I like his chances to break out if he gets a bigger role on the Wranglers this season. Jakob Peltier absolutely balled out last season in Stockton. He did so with a skill set that may surprise some. Peltier's best skill is his shot. He has a great release and finds soft ice to shoot from. The rest of his skill set doesn't really match his point totals, though. His playmaking vision is just good. The same could be said of his puck skills. Peltier is a very smart player, though, that understands how to utilize teammates and how to get lost in coverage. That, more than any raw tool, defines his game. His skating isn't good, though, and it limits his upside, especially as an undersized player. He compensates with his hockey smarts, but attacking on the rush isn't a big part of his offensive abilities because of his skating. In the defensive zone, he's great at pressuring puck carriers and helps steer them into the teeth of the defense in transition. All in all, I think Peltier can be better this season for the Wranglers than he was last season for the Heat. Cole Schwindt comes to the Wranglers as part of the Tkachuk for Huberdeau and Uyghur trade. Schwindt's coming off an okay season in Charlotte, and his game has upside. He's a good sniper. He didn't shoot 17.9%. He did shoot 17.9% last year, which is probably going to regress some for this season, but not a ton. His playmaking in tight is more impressive than his shot, though. He also wasn't used often on the power play in Charlotte, which adds to his lack of scoring totals last season. His skating is a concern, though, as he struggles to play with pace. Should he be able to find time on the power play, he should have a breakout year for the Wranglers. I do think that there's a good chance that Ben Jones' scoring totals regress this season. I still think he's a good player, but him shooting 17.2% again is unlikely. Jones isn't a bad shooter, but his shooting talent doesn't line up with that number. Jones is a bit more of a power forward and plays a hard nose to the net kind of game, and he scores mostly from tips and rebounds. He's typically the last to leave the offensive zone because he'll regularly stay at the net front until the puck has cleared the zone. As such, he's not a valuable defensive player in transition because he's that last guy coming out. The rest of Jones' skill set is kind of mixed. He's not a good skater, but has shown some flashes of higher-end puck skills and playmaking vision. He's also occasionally struggled to corral passes and will bobble pucks on his own here and there. I think Jones is a good complementary piece that can play a top 6 role with some power play time, but he'll need to find good chemistry with line mates to get that outcome. Last but not least is the big waiver move from Calgary this year. That was snagging Radim Zohorna. Zohorna is big and towering, but has nimble skills. He bounced back and forth between Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, and Pittsburgh last season, but he has an interesting skill set. He has good puck skills, especially in tight, and especially for a guy his size. He can really maneuver pucks in a phone booth, despite the fact that he's huge. He has a good shot on him too, but his downfall is, shockingly, skating. If he can add a gear, he might be able to stick longer in Calgary for a cup of coffee, but I think he's going to be an impact player on the Wranglers this season if he can stay in the lineup and not, get called up to Calgary. Let's shift over to the defenseman. One of the newcomers, Dennis Gilbert, is one of the best defensive defensemen in the Pacific Division. He's not afraid to sell out every shift, blocking multiple shots per game by simply laying out his 6'2" frame in front of shooters. Playing with Colorado last season, he was a balanced force alongside the best defensive player in the AHL in Jordan Gross, but injury kept him out of the postseason. He's also quick on the back check. He can be physical on the play without being undisciplined and racking up penalty minutes. He also has a great stick and can cause turnovers, once again, without getting too many penalties. Gilbert's ability to clog up passing lanes and shooting lanes is NHL caliber, and given the right opportunity, Gilbert could stick with the Flames should injuries flare up. A solid but unspectacular season last year for Nick DeSimone, which fits his skill set pretty well. He has good skating, good puck skills, decent playmaking vision, but he's not really great at either. His hockey IQ is above average, and he's about an average shooter. His defensive game is also just okay, but he seems to find middle pair production season after season, and I think that's likely for him to happen again. Although he's shown to be a veteran kind of middle pair guy with some power play upside for a few seasons now, I think that's where he lands on the Wranglers. Jeremy Poirier's skill set is an offensive one. He has great raw tools, great playmaking vision, great puck skills, absolute cannon for a shot. He's an ace in transition and can start breakouts better than anyone. He also has great hockey IQ habits. He activates off the blue line during the cycle. He jumps into the rush as the fourth forward. And yet he's going to be a project because, well, as a defenseman, his actual defense is not great. He has good speed, but his edge work and defensive skating are not up to snuff. That leads him to getting burned in defending the rush, especially against faster forwards. Defending the cycle, he struggles to find threats away from the puck and lacks attention to detail at times. He should be able to provide enough offense to act as a counterweight to his defense, but that part of his game is where development really needs to happen. Last for the defensive group here, we're going to talk about Jan Kuznetsov. After getting some cups of coffee in the AHL at the end of college and junior seasons, Kuznetsov is finally in the AHL full-time this season. His game is not subtle, however. He's a blunt force physical defender who, for the most part, stays out of the box. But he also knows how to use his head to defend. He times moves in the neutral zone well to step up and kill chances before they turn into threats. However, as many players of his size, his skating is a weakness and can leave him open to being beaten by deft skaters. Offensively, he's not going to do a whole lot. He isn't the best in transition, and his skill set doesn't really lend itself to offensive production. But every team needs stay-at-home defensemen that can be physical and kill penalties. The Wranglers have Kuznetsov. A few other notables from the roster here. Emilio Pettersson had a decent season, but seems to be limited by his ice time more than his own skill set. He has a good skill set, solid playmaking vision. His puck skills are high-end, and he can make moves one-on-one. He's a decent shooter. He has straight-line speed, but skates a lot in arcs and attacks on hard angles, which is good. His defensive game is pretty solid, too. He's a good penalty killer. He puts constant pressure on puck carriers in his area. He forces turnovers regularly. All that should point to increased playing time, but the Wranglers lineup is stacked this year, and the Heat's lineup was stacked last year, and it's hard to see him overcoming somebody on the depth chart for more playing time. I'd love for him to get time on a second power play unit, but as it stands right now, that seems a little unlikely. Last, let's talk about Roy Cairns. Cairns had a standout season in juniors last season. His game is an interesting one. He has above average playmaking vision, above average puck skills. He also has a nose for the net and will drive to the slot often. That's where he does most of his work as a playmaker as well, finding open teammates in and around the net. Cairns is a good shooter, so his pass-first mentality will play to his strengths. He also is a below-average skater and can struggle to play with pace. In the defensive zone, I don't anticipate him being more than an AHL average defensive forward. Not great, but not getting burned either. Those are the skaters. Let's move on to the goaltenders. Dustin Wolf, a finalist for the 21-22 Best Goaltender Award and a finalist for the 21-22 Best Goalie Mask. Teen Wolf is back in the AHL this season for now. It's going to be hard for him to unseat Jacob Markstrom or Dan Vladar in net, and I think he gets some starts across the hall for the Flames this season. Despite that, though, Wolf's best skill is his puck tracking, which is high-end. He's rarely behind the play or surprised by a shot on a cross-ice pass. That doesn't mean they go in, or that doesn't mean he stops all of them, but to be right on top of the puck for cross-ice passes for very high-danger play like that is a important skill for him to have. He also moves very well. His technical game is high end. Usually this is the part of the breakdown where we would talk about a flaw or what needs to improve, but I don't really got one. His worst skill is poise, maybe? I don't really have anything here. He's a damn good goaltender, and given the traffic jam ahead of him on the depth chart, he should spend most of the season with the Wranglers unless one of Markstrom or Vladar get hurt. But that presence on the Wranglers this year could power them to an amazing season. His backup this year looks to be Oscar Dansk. Dansk has shown to be right around average as an AHL goalie. What I'm saying is Oscar Dansk won't fall apart at halftime. He moves well. He has good technical skills. He's reasonably consistent. He's not the most athletic goalie and does give up soft goals more often than you'd like to see. For a backup goalie, though, the Wranglers have a solid one in Dansk that can give Wolf a night off while not leaving them 2 quarters and a heart down. Those are all the skaters on Stockton that I was hoping to talk about. So let's pull back, look at the team as a whole, give some loose thoughts. I would say losing guys like Kirkland, Gaudin, Froese are not small subtractions, especially as Froese was the captain and a clear leader in the locker room. But they still have an ace coaching staff, solid talent up front, youths who could mature into impact players, and one of the best goalies in the AHL. I don't think it's likely that they're the dominant team that stormed the division and just trucked fools last year, but they should be an easy playoff team and possibly in the fight for a division title at the end of the season, but I don't think that anyone runs away with it this year. That is our time in Calgary, talking about the Flames affiliate, the Calgary Wranglers. Let's move on. We're going to talk about the Ontario Reign. Their 21-22 team record was 41-27. It was good for second place in the Pacific Division. They have a new head coach in Marco Sturm, who starts the season at 0-0 as an AHL head coach. Obviously, no playoff appearances. His assistants are Chris Hutt and Brad Schuler. The additions to the Reign this year are Martin Chromiak, Alan Quine, Tyler Inamoto, Toby Buquet-Bisson, and Phoenix Copley. Their subtractions are big ones. Martin Firk, Vladimir Kachov, Brett Sutter, Austin Strand, Christian Wolanin, Nelson Nogier, Thomas Hickey, and Lucas Parik. Let's start with the forwards, and the only place you can start with the forwards on the Reign is TJ Tynan, a shoo-in for any top 6 forward core in the AHL, and probably should be getting looks at the NHL level at least a little bit. He became the first back-to-back league MVP since Paul Gardner in the mid-'80s. With a whopping 84 assists and just 2 points shy of the century mark last year, Tynan continues to prove why he's one of the best playmakers at this level. He averaged a point per game or more in 4 straight seasons. He's not going to have Martin Firk set up for goals anymore, but again, 4 straight seasons shows that he can mesh with almost any top forwards for goal scoring. Tynan's abilities have been chronicled thoroughly. Elite level deception, looking off netminders, high level playmaking vision, can thread passes across Royal Road during the rush and along the right wing end boards. Very high hockey IQ. Deploys on both the first power play and penalty kill units. High energy, great forechecker, very visible on the ice. Like most guys around 5'8", his size seems to keep him from sticking in the NHL because his skating is not high end, and that gives him trouble separating from NHL caliber defenders. But he's an elite AHL forward and is still someone that I feel like should be able to carve out a role on an NHL team. But for whatever reason, NHL teams are not calling for the 2-time, possibly 3-time AHL MVP, but they probably should be. But their loss is Ontario's gain. Let's move on and talk about Samuel Fagemo. Fagemo's game is built on what Brian Burke would call truculence. He's a rapid puck hound who knows 2 speeds, rest and full. And he doesn't hit rest until he's on the bench. He's a puck hound, but does so with work ethic more than quality skating. His other standout skill is his high-end shot, and he showed it off last year with 27 goals. I think he could hit 35 this year without too much trouble, or at least a 35-goal pace, because I think it's kind of unlikely he spends the entire season in Ontario. The rest of his game could use work, though, if he wants to help his chances to move up and stick in the Kings organization. His puck skills and playmaking vision are just okay. He's not a defensive-minded player either. Still, He's going to score this season for the Reign, and very likely a lot. And shooting talent is the most valuable thing in hockey. If you have it, you will always have a place in the top 6. Another season cut short by injury for Alex Turcotte, but he was showing promise last season, I thought. He starts the season on IR for a concussion he suffered back in May, but at some point, he'll join the Reign this season. He's still only 21, but feels like he's been in the Kings pipeline since Marcel Dion was their leading scorer. They'll likely need a reason. This will likely need to be a season that Turcotte takes the leap forward. He has all the raw tools to be an impact player. He's a good skater. He has great playmaking vision, great puck skills. He has shooting talent. He makes a big impact in the defensive zone, but he's always struggled to put that all together into offensive production. And it is concerning if he doesn't start to do it this season that he's never going to make that leap. I'm not saying it's not possible, but we need to, if nothing else, see more signposts that that season is coming for him if it isn't going to be this year. Falling in kind of the same grouping is Tyler Madden. Yet another season from Madden that was cut short by injury. This one, much like Alex Turcotte, needs to be a big one for him, though. It's his last season of his ELC, and he's going to be 23. That's a point in a lot of prospects' career where they get busy making the NHL, or they get busy being an AHL veteran. I think Madden still has the skill set to land firmly in the NHL category. He has plenty of offensive talent, especially as a shooter. He has great puck skills. He's made progress in his abilities as a playmaker, but his health has really not been in his favor. Hopefully he gets a healthy season this year to showcase what he can do, because I am part of the, few people left still that believe that Tyler Madden can do the thing and be an NHL player. Next, let's talk about Rasmus Kupari. It's kind of surprising to see Kupari here after he got 57 games with the Kings last season, plus 5 playoff games. And while I thought he looked good in them, the ice time was not really conducive to scoring production. Kupari is a solid skater. That plus his work ethic usually means he's in the frame when he's on the ice. He's a threat with the puck every time it's on his stick, and yet his offensive production can wax and wane at times. He puts effort in on defense, but isn't someone I would be relying on for it. I don't know how long he stays with the Reign this season, but he should be lighting it up while he's there, because he has an NHL skill set, and that's what kept him with Los Angeles most of last year. But, their forward depth up there is getting good, and that pushed him down a little bit, and he's going to have to do something to show that he does not belong in the AHL. Last on the top 6 forwards, let's talk about Alan Quine. A big question for the Reign this season is which Quine shows up in Ontario. He had a tremendous season with Stockton in 18-19 and 19-20, averaging around 1.25 and 1.2 points per game respectively. And yet, in the last 2 years, he's taken a dip in productivity. Only played a portion of the full schedule, and that doesn't really help any matters. He's an above-average skater, though, and also has very good puck skills. His playmaking skills in transition are also very good. But Quine is missing that top speed to place him in the NHL ranks, though. As he approaches his birthday in February, as he's starting to, get a little long in the tooth, we may start to see some of those skills decline a little bit. But I think he holds off Father Time for now. If he can return to, finding his groove a little bit more in his upper echelon scoring ways, he would probably be one of the best second-line players in the AHL. If not, he could be looking more at middle 6 production. I think the skills are there, but we'll see if he can find the chemistry to make that production a reality. Let's transition over and talk about the top 4 defensemen on the Reign this season. Let's start with Jordan Spence. Last season, we called Jordan Spence MacGyver because he uses his very high hockey IQ to make up for the lack of physical talent. And that's more or less what MacGyver was, someone who could use their brain to improvise with whatever was around him to make what he needed to make his escape in a situation, or to, be functional for whatever he needed it to be. And that is Jordan Spence. That gives him NHL upside because that's how smart of a player he is. He finds soft ice and times his activations off the blue line with precision, so he moves into an open pocket of space right at the right time. He can find teammates through traffic under pressure. He can beat forecheckers with well-timed passes and deception because he's not really fast enough to do it with his feet. He doesn't have a hard shot, but he finds ways to sneak it past shot blockers and screens to get it on net. All in all, Spence's game will continue to translate well into production. If he can take some small steps forward in his raw tools, he could blossom to be one of the better defenders in the AHL this season. Helge Grans really turned in a solid season for the Reign as a teenager, and that's not a small feat. He showed a solid skill set too. He's a decent shooter, although I expect his goal totals to come down a little bit. He's an adept playmaker and can find teammates in scoring areas. He's an above-average skater. He's not the most physical defender, but he can take care of business in his own end. I think he has the skill set to be more offensive and take some more chances, as he reverted to a safer, kind of lower risk plays a little bit too often last season. If he can find more a bit of those moments to exploit and maybe take some risks, I think he could surprise people with how well he produces on offense this year. Frederick Allard came over to the Reign via trade in late March, and he made a big impact right away, but I question how sustainable that is. That's not to say he's not a good player. His calling card is his hockey IQ. He reads the play well, anticipates, and attacks, whether that's offensively finding passing lanes that others miss or being patient and letting plays develop through the neutral zone before making his move. The rest of his offensive toolkit, though, is kind of average-ish. He's not a terribly good skater, nor is his shot really in the cannon column. It's more in the pistol column. Defensively, he's good, but is not great. I think he profiles more as a second-pair defenseman who can chip in 20, 25-ish points, but I think that's about it. It took a while last season for Cameron Gaunce to get going, but when he did get going, the offense flowed. Gaunce's game is more offensive than defensive, as he has a solid offensive skill set. He has good puck skills, good playmaking vision. His hockey IQ is high, and he reads the play well and finds moments to activate off the blue line. His skating is solid, but he doesn't have a high top speed. But he's fast enough to move the puck through the neutral zone and threaten to beat forecheckers with his feet. Defensively, he's very aggressive, trying to break up plays in the neutral zone, and occasionally takes too big a risk and gets burned the other way. In zone, he's not the best. He's not always great at looking over his shoulder, trying to find guys who are, coming in backdoor as threats, but he's mediocre at that. Gaunce still, with his skill set, should be a top 4 defenseman this season who gets some power play time, but I wouldn't be, jumping up and down to put him out there on the penalty kill. 2 other notables I wanted to talk about on this roster. One is Akil Thomas. Last season was pretty much a throwaway for Akil Thomas. A shoulder injury took nearly all of a season, and it took a while for him to, shake off the rust when he did come back. When he did find his game, though, he showed that he was still an impact player as he took over a game or 2 in the Calder Cup playoffs. Thomas's game is about work ethic. His skill set chalks in as above average for the AHL, but not one that pops off the page. But he catches scouts' eyes because of his hustle and two-way ability paired with a pretty solid skill set. Like many other prospects on the Reign, he could use a big season here to help him climb a very crowded forward depth chart here. But he has the talent to do it. He's shown in games that he can take over and dominate, where he'll score 3 or 4 goals in a game. But it's finding those moments and those efforts closer together that has been a struggle for Thomas so far. Hopefully he's able to, shake off some of the rink rust that's left and continue to be the player that I think he could be, which is an NHL center. Last but certainly not least for the skaters, let's talk about Martin Chromiak. You don't have to watch Martin Chromiak long to see the skill set. He's a solid playmaker with very good puck skills, but it's just around average as a shooter. However, his skating and pace are a little bit concerning. I think that keeps him from being a big factor in transition. It also raises questions about how much he'll need to adjust to the pace of the AHL. There's talent there, and he clearly has upside, but I think there's a good chance that he struggles out of the gate. However, I could see an instance where he starts to, adjust and pick up the processing speed a little bit, and around the holidays start to find his game and get a little bit more on the score sheet. Let's talk lastly about the goaltenders, which is not the strongest of areas for this Ontario Reign team, starting with Matthew Villalta. I mean, this has to be the year for Villalta to get it done, right? It's the last year of his ELC. He turns 23, which in goalie years is not old or too late to be, to blossom. But I mean, he has 86 games played in the AHL. and they have by and large not gone terribly well. If he doesn't make leaps forward this year, if I'm the Kings, I think it's likely that he does, the rest of his career in another organization. Villalta's always been a solid athletic goaltender. He's able to explode post to post and make tough saves. However, his movement looks busy and nervous at times. He also doesn't track the puck that well and gets beat on pucks he's late to identify. He's also struggled with consistency throughout his career, and last season didn't do him any favors in that department, despite what I thought was a better defensive structure in front of him. Going into the season, he's not a goalie I terribly trust and isn't one I'd be giving a lot of leash to. However, he's going to get games and a chance to show progress because that's what the AHL is for. It's not to give, your older backup veteran goalies a chance to prosper and develop. It's to give your kids a chance to develop. And that's what Villalta still is. He's still part of, the young guns, the black and silver bandits. So he's going to need to be given opportunities to succeed. It's just, if he's going to, it's got to be this year. Backing him up is a longtime favorite in Hershey, Phoenix Copley. Copley posted his first season with above average numbers in quite some time. At 30, I think Copley is likely just going to be a serviceable backup at this point in his career. He does everything well, but isn't great at any one skill. He has good athleticism. He has good technical abilities. He moves well. But as I mentioned, he posted his first season in Hershey last year with above average goaltending numbers for the first time in quite a few seasons. I think he's capable as a backup or as like a 1B that plays 40% max of the workload, but I don't know if I would trust Copley for more than that at this point. He can give you a game or two where he steals it, but long-term, that's not a viable solution. Those are all the skaters. Let's talk about the team as a whole. Losing a talent like Ferk is going to hurt any team, and yet I still feel like there's enough here to contend for a Pacific Division title. The goaltending is the only part that makes me think otherwise. Copley's around average, and Villalta hasn't been anything but below average in his career thus far. With Ferk gone, it seems unlikely the Reign can outscore their problems, despite having a good amount of success with that plan last season. If they can get better net minding, I think they're likely a contender. If not, I think they're still a fun team and a good team, but a flawed team, and not one that I would trust to go on a deep playoff run. That is our time with the Ontario Reign. We must move forward and talk about the Colorado Eagles. Their 21-22 record, 39-29, third place in the Atlantic Division. Their coaching staff is head coach Greg Cronin, 202 wins, 184 losses as an AHL head coach, 4 playoff appearances. He is 2-4 in AHL playoff series as a head coach. His assistant coach is Aaron Schneekloff and Tim Branham. Their additions to the Colorado Eagles this year include Justin Scott, Charles Hudon, Spencer Smallman, Brad Hunt, Josh Jacobs, Mitch Van de Sample, Jonas Johansson, and Lucas Parik. Their subtractions: Andreas Wingerly, Dylan Sakura, Kiefer Sherwood, Stefan Matteau, Gabriel Fontaine, Dennis Gilbert, Jordan Gross, Roland McKeon, and Hunter Mishka. Let's start with the forwards that are still in town, and there's only one place to start. That's Jason Megna. Megna was awarded the C yet again for 22-23, played 20 games for the Avs and 33 for the Eagles last regular season. At age 32, he is a veteran presence both in the locker room and on the ice. One of his standout skills for Megna is his net front ability. At 5-on-5 or on the power play, he can simply post up and screen goalies effectively. He also had 9 points in 9 playoff games last year to finish the year strong. I think at times he can get a little too fancy on the penalty kill, where he tries to make moves and start a rush the other way, where he just needs to clear the puck. At even strength, he can lead and dictate the offense during zone entries, though, and in transition. I think he's probably on the short list for forwards being called up to the Avs again this season, which, given the forward depth is not as deep as it was last year, that concerns me for the Eagles' overall outlook. But when he is in Loveland, he is going to be one of their best forwards. Another top 6 forwards for the Eagles this season is going to be Mikhail Maltsev. Maltsev already has good chemistry with Martin Kaut, who we'll get to in a minute. He's been deployed mostly as a center, but can bump to the wing as well. He's also a depth option for the Avs, playing 18 games with the Colorado Avalanche last season. Playmaking passes were his bread and butter in 21-22, and while said to have too quiet a game for Avs coach Jared Bednar, Maltsev does have an adaptable shot for the pro game. He can grind, he can play the skill game, he's versatile. He can win battles along the boards, he can win battles along the net front, he can do some special things with the puck. If you don't believe me, check out his between the legs goal against the Henderson Silver Knights last October. Mikhail Maltsev should be making a big impact here for the Eagles again this season. And he had good chemistry, as we mentioned, with Martin Kaut, who's now played 4 seasons with the Colorado Eagles. He seems to be the regular part of the rumor mill when it comes to trade deadline time, but here he is for season number 5. Surprisingly, him and Shane Bowers were some of the last cuts from Avs training camp. But Kaut has a skill set that should be, one that gets NHL looks. He has above average puck handling, skating, shooting, and passing, but what he lacks in higher end talent, he makes up for in effort and hustle. Kaut is a 200-foot player that can channel electricity when he's locked in. His main struggle seems to be, though, his confidence. He gets inside his own head when things are rough and struggles to focus on being there in the moment where his feet are. In the last year of his entry-level contract, this is definitely a show-me season for Martin Kaut, who's done well and produced, but has yet to take that leap forward and really plant the flag. That should be this season's goal for Martin Kaut. Sampo Ranta's game is very simple. It's speed. He can fly up and down the ice with little runway to get up to top speed. He uses that speed to power his game. However, the rest of his skills lag behind his skates. He's a good but not great shooter, but his playmaking vision and puck skills still need work. He doesn't always have the best positioning off puck and struggles to be an option for teammates in the offensive zone. That made him easier to defend as flying up the wall was the only way he was going to beat defensemen. He'll need to add to that playbook if he wants to take steps forward, but he still has an important aspect to the Eagles game, and that is his speed. One of the new additions for the Eagles this season will be Charles Hudon, with the dynamic duo of Kiefer Sherwood and Dylan Sekura becoming not appearing in this Eagles team. Hudon slots in as one of the new top 6 skill guys in Loveland. As we've been saying for a few years now, Charles Hudon is AHL Ovechkin. In the 21-22 AHL season, Hudon blasted one-timers for the right face-off dot on the power play. He scored 13 power play goals, and many of them looked just like that. That was tied for 5th in the AHL. Hudon has good offensive vision and okay skating, so he's going to need some line mates who can transport the puck to the offensive zone and find him. But his big weapon is shooting talent, and that heavy one-timer should boost the Eagles' power play this year, a power play that struggled at times to have that kind of connectivity. Last, for the forwards in the top 6, let's talk about Callahan Burke. An incredibly disciplined forward with only 17 penalty minutes in 57 games played last year. Impressed so much so last season that he got his first NHL deal in December. He's a strong and fast skater that surveys all 3 zones. He'll burst into the offensive zone, utilize his above-average handling to maintain puck possession. He also likes to crash the net, look for the puck, and make a play in tight. His dangling goal against Dustin Wolf from last November comes to mind when I think about his skill set. His defense is kind of average. He's definitely a more offensive-minded forward. With his speed, though, he fits right into the run-and-gun offense that Colorado played last year. We'll see if they can utilize that again this season. Shifting over to the defensemen, a lot of changes here, but one that is still the same is Keaton Middleton. Middleton's game is as a defensive defenseman. He's big, physical, and defends the cycle with aggression. He's not very mobile as his skating isn't very good, even for a player his size, but he can move the puck a bit in transition. His offensive skills aren't great. I would call them below league average in the AHL. Aside from the occasional seeing eye slap shot, I don't expect much offense from him. However, he could be a useful defensive partner to someone with more offensive upside, which Colorado had a lot of last year. But, this season, new blue line. One of those new members is Daniil Sherlovyov. Sherlovyov's game is based on his skating. He's got speed to burn and high-level edge work. Because of that, he can lead the breakout and be invaluable in transition. From there, his offensive skill set checks in at around average. He's an average shooter, His playmaking vision and puck skills are around average and need some refining. He also isn't terribly active off his blue line during the cycle. That's an aspect that was heavily utilized last season by the Eagles, so he'll need to add that to his game if he's going to be a more regular contributor to the Eagles' offense in zone. His defending isn't bad, but more attention to detail would be a nice development. As the only true prospect on this blue line, it's likely that he sees the ice a fair amount, and he has skills that can contribute, but there's development that needs to happen here. It's surprising to see Brad Hunt here, and he's likely on the short list for call-ups by the Avs when they need a veteran body. Hunt played exclusively in the NHL the last 5 seasons. He's more of an offensive-minded defenseman who brings with him a skill set that should excel at the AHL level. He has a powerful shot. He's got above AHL average puck skills and playmaking vision. He's an okay skater, but he should be able to move the puck well in transition. Defensively, he's never been excellent, but he should be fine. At 34, we'll see how much is left in the tank for Hunt, but assuming he takes well to the AHL assignment, he should be an impact puck mover from the blue line. Rob Hamilton was deployed as a bottom 6th and 7th defenseman last season. That in mind, it's easy to overlook that he had 6 goals and 20 assists. It was his best point per game clip in his entire career. He certainly gets the nod in the top 4 over rookie Amont and bruiser Englund, but he's not afraid to go into the dirty areas on D and bang the boards. In doing so, he's effective in causing turnovers in the corners. Offensively, he has the vision to clear the D zone and get the puck out to the skater, leading the charge in the neutral zone. Hamilton is a solid two-way defenseman that'll probably be coupled with the rookie on the second defensive pairing and should be an effective two-way defenseman for the Eagles this season. A trio of other notables on the roster this year. Let's start with Jean-Luc Foudy. It is bonkers to me that he's a 20-year-old and has over 100 games of AHL regular season duty and postseason experience. But COVID times have been strange. Like we've talked about ad nauseum, Foudy's game is speed. He uses that explosiveness to generate quick entries in the offensive zone with puck possession. Again, with all that pro experience he has now, his mind is beginning to catch up to the raw athleticism that his body possessed a couple seasons ago. Foudy's high-end speed also helps on the defensive side too. He can help create turnovers and gets back to the puck in transition quickly. He's a solid back checker. He also has good playmaking skills, good vision, as well as puck skills. He also has developed his shot and breakaway chances, showcasing his improvement with the Game 3 overtime winner against Dustin Wolf in the Stockton Heat in that divisional playoffs last year. Like last season, he'll make a decent top 6 fill-in if injuries, can rear their ugly heads. But for right now, I think he starts somewhere in the third line neighborhood. In an interview with Ryan Wagner last season, he said, "I don't wear a letter, but that doesn't really bother me. It shouldn't bother anyone if they're a leader in their mind." But earlier this week, he was awarded an assistant captain A. Wagner is 5'8", but plays like he's a foot taller. The embodiment of the aggressive skater mentality. Like we said, physical play is a mindset. It's not a body type. It's not a size. It's not a height. It's not a weight. For example, Wagner had no hesitation body checking Vincent Desharnais, who's 6'7" when they play the Condors. Wagner is a guy that sells out every shift and never takes one off. He's always in pursuit on the forecheck, always aware on the back check. He is visibly physical and noticeable every time he hits the ice. Wagner's also a sneaky scoring threat too. Put up 10 goals last regular season. He has a rated offensive skill set. Last for the other notables here, let's talk about Oscar Olofsson. Only appearing in 4 playoff games for the Eagles last season, his 2 assists came in a 10-1 boat race of the Ontario Reign. 1 primary, 1 secondary. Needless to say, that whole game was kind of a blur. Still, in limited viewing, the Avs' highest prospect not playing with the big club this year is, he has an impressive skill set to him. He's got a pro build at 19 years old, and he has the speed and skill to beat defenders one-on-one in zone entries with puck skills and skating. His shot has power and accuracy that are already NHL level, and yet he continues to improve on his release speed and shot deception. His above-average puck skills and puck management make him a good two-way forward to keep an eye on for Colorado. If he carries the confidence he had in the OHL over to the AHL, he might end up being in the top 6 sooner rather than later. That rounds off the skaters. Let's talk about the voodoo and go to our goaltenders on the Eagles this season. Your workhorse is going to very likely be Justus Annunen again. Annunen played in 48 of Colorado's 68 games last year. That was second in the AHL. He also played 2,700 minutes in goal, which was good for third in the league. However, a lot of the shine has fallen off him as his numbers were unspectacular despite all that playing time. It's possible we see a bounce back season as he has a solid skill set. He tracks the puck well. He doesn't overcommit. He moves well. He has good technical abilities. My hope is that we can chalk up last season's woes to adjusting to the North American game and the better talent of the AHL. He's going to need to show that he's worthy of that workload this year and take steps forward, because you can't be giving goaltenders that much playing time when they're not stopping the puck at a high level. Jonas Johansson was with the Avs last season until he was placed on waivers in mid-December, and then he kind of bounced around a bunch. The 27-year-old vet had to grow up in the AHL over 3 seasons with Rochester, but will be a serviceable backup, I think, to Annunen. Someone who once described him as putting up good numbers with good teams and bad numbers with bad ones, but I don't think that's exactly true anymore. He hasn't had double digits games played with a team since his 1920 season with Rochester, which he had a .921 save percentage and was in the 65th percentile among goalies in the point shares model. That's good for a starter's grade. But his skill set is still one that lends itself to being a quality AHL goaltender, at least as a backup. He tracks the puck well and isn't afraid to play the puck behind the net. His lateral movement is about average. Some of the rebounds he lets up are a bit concerning, but I would say that his ability to be consistent will be the key this year, even if he stays with the Eagles and playing that 20 to 25 game range. If he can find his groove in there, which can be difficult not playing, every other night, every third night, I think he'll be a useful part of this Eagles team. That is all the skaters that we're going to cover for the Colorado Eagles. So let's pull back a little bit and talk about the team as a whole. The Eagles have taken big losses regarding guys like Sherwood, Sekura, Gross, and Gilbert. That's 2 forwards who are in the top 10 in AHL scoring, the best defenseman award winner, and one of the best defensive defensemen in the division and maybe the league. Hudon was a solid acquisition to try and fill that void, but a lot of depth behind him feels one-dimensional, and a lot of the younger guys don't exactly seem poised for breakout seasons. With 7 teams making the playoffs in this division, the Eagles should still safely fit in, but unlike last season, that spot isn't guaranteed to them, and they're going to have to fight for it. They aren't going to be able to coast on their talents to finish the season well in a playoff spot. They are going to have to go out there and battle every night if they want to make the expanded postseason cash grab. That is our time with Colorado. Let us move on and talk about the Bakersfield Condors. Their 21-22 team record, 37-31. That was good for 4th place in the Pacific Division. Their coaching staff is Colin Chalk, who is 19-15 as an AHL head coach, 1 playoff appearance, 1-1 in AHL playoff series. His assistant coaches are Keith McCambridge and Josh Green. The additions to the Condors roster as a whole, we'll say, Tyler Tullio, Xavier Borgault, Greg McKegg, Matt Boudin, Samuel Dove McFalls, Mark Rassel, Drake Rishma, Justin Bailey, Adam Brubacher, Calvin Pickard, and Colton Points. The subtractions: Ostap Safin, Adam Cracknell, Cooper Marody, Tim Schaller, Colton Sevier, Devin Brousseau, Philip Berglund, and Ilya Konovlov. Let's talk first about the forwards, and the only place we can start is with Seth Griffith. Griffith put up a monster season last year. And while I think his game took steps forward for sure, I don't know if he's able to sustain that level of offense. For starters, a lot of his production came from the chemistry he had with Cooper Marody and Adam Cracknell. Neither of them are still with the Condors. He also shot 24.6% last season. And while I think he's a solid sniper, that's an unsustainable number. I still like Griffith's game a lot, though. He has very good puck skills, good playmaking vision. He's a solid shooter, but he was a lot better off puck last season, too. His defensive game came along a bit, too, last season. If he can find the same chemistry he had last season, I still think he can excel, but an 80-point season seems unlikely to be repeated for me. I've always thought that Greg McKegg sounded like the name of a Scottish pagan god of beer. Although, I don't think beer came in kegs when pagans were big in Scotland. So, on a hockey note, McKegg's a good skater with very good puck skills and a good shot. His problem is that he doesn't get the shot volume to hit the goal totals that go with his skill set. What he really needs to do is listen to the fans in the Mechanics Bank Arena yelling, "Shoot!" Defensively, I do think that he's not that great. He won't be a liability, but he's not a game changer in his own end. He has NHL level talent and should be a solid offensive option for the Condors this season, but defensively, not going to be the guy that's killing penalties, hopefully. Guys that are Justin Bailey size should not be allowed to have Justin Bailey speed. Bailey's game is based on that size-speed combination. He's a solid net front presence and can box out defenders for rebounds. His puck skills aren't great as he's occasionally, guilty of bobbling a pass or two. For a guy that size, he's also remarkably not very physical and doesn't like to take the body too often. Defensively, he's pretty good. He can kill penalties. He's shown to effectively pressure puck carriers. His AHL contract is also important because it means he's not likely going anywhere and should be a near point per game veteran for the Condors this season, as that's what he's been in the past reliably. Klim Kostin came over to Bakersfield after being traded 1-for-1 for Dmitry Samorukov. Kostin is a big body who's become a more balanced scorer. He's a decent shooter who can find soft space in high areas. He can also be a solid playmaker, using his body to shield the puck and draw defenders to him, and then hitting open teammates. He's also done better by simplifying his game. In the past, he'd look like he was trying to do too much and was ineffective because of it. Kostin's biggest worry has always been consistency. He has good tools, but has made weird mistakes during games in the past where he'd miss obvious plays and just look off. When he's on, he's capable of dominating play, but he's never been able to be that way consistently. I think he finishes the season with good stats, but I expect there be a few games during the season where Condors fans say, "Hey, where's Klim been?" despite him having played in games. Matthias Janmark is another surprising veteran who looks to be starting in the AHL this season. I mean, we're going to be talking about Jason Demers in a bit. Jason Neal played in Springfield last season, so this isn't totally unheard of. When we see Shea Weber in Henderson or Brett Seabrook in a Syracuse Crunch jersey, that's a sign we've entered the upside down. At the AHL level, his skill set should have him handle business in the offensive zone. Janmark is a capable playmaker. He has a nose for the net and can get tips and bang home rebounds. He's also a smart player who can read the play and put himself in great position to score. Defensively, he should be rock solid and a capable penalty killer. I don't think Janmark belongs in the AHL, and I expect him to look like it for the Condors. Last for the forwards on the top six that we're going to talk about anyway is James Hamblin. While Hamblin is undersized, he overcomes that with speed and work ethic. Hamblin can put defenders on their heels, and that buys him time and space, which is important when you're on the smaller side of the scale. His other offensive tools are good, but they're not great. He's above average as a shooter and as a playmaker. Hamblin also is a huge contributor as a forechecker, using his speed and work ethic once again to add value. He can pressure defensemen as the first forechecker and create turnovers with that pressure, and those turnovers in the offensive zone are incredibly valuable. It's possible that Hamlin's points regress a bit this season. I mean, he shot 17.4% last season and racked up more secondary assists than primary assists. That doesn't bode well for repeating last season's totals. But I still think he makes a solid impact on the offense. Let's shift things over to the top four defensemen. Number one, obvious, Philip Broberg. Broberg was called up by Edmonton after they had some injury troubles to start the season. However, I believe he's already returned. I think he's going to spend a fair amount of time with the Condors, so we're including him in the preview here. Broberg's game is based on skating. He's a high-level skater that skates the puck in transition. It also allows him to defend his blue line at a high level, and he can pivot and close off puck carriers easily. The rest of his offensive skill set is very good. He's a good shooter. His playmaking vision and puck skills are good. He's big and physical as well. However, there are definitely times where I feel like he lacks the toolbox to put all those tools to maximum use. He's good in transition, but there are a lot of moments where he'd just end up dumping the puck in. His speed and his skill set should prevent that from happening very often. And while he was a very good playmaker with 13 primary assists, I also saw moments where I thought he missed opportunities. Broberg's production at the last season of the AHL was high level, so I don't want people to think that I'm not very high on Philip Broberg. I am, but I think there's another level here, and I want to see him reach it. Speaking of guys who made, a nice jump in production last year, Yanni Kaldis. He made good on that skill set that I was a lot higher on than other people. He has above average puck skills and a good hockey IQ. He's an above average skater whose stride is just smooth. He uses that skating to either join the rush or lead it effectively. He's also not afraid to come off the blue line during offensive zone cycles and try to be a shooting threat in the slot. Shooting talent-wise, he's improved, but I think 7 goals is likely to be a career high for him. He's made some strides in his playmaking in zone last season, as well as he found some passing lanes much easier than he had in the past. Still, a lot of his production was boosted by secondary assists on the power play. I don't think that translates well to this season, but I still think he has good playmaking vision and should still be on the power play. Defensively, he's okay and uses brains rather than brawn to defend. I think he's capable, maybe not of 7 goals, but a 35-point season should be within reach for him, or a 35-point pace, we'll say. What does a 34-year-old Jason Demers still have left in the tank? Excellent question. Thank you for asking, Sean. By all accounts, he seems hungry and feels like he has more to give. What his game looks like at the AHL level is kind of hard to know, but we'll take some shots at it. That is what we do. Demers should be a reliable defender for the Condors. He's capable of defending the cycle, picking up off-puck threats. Defending the rush is a trickier question. He wasn't great at it at the NHL level, and skating ability and timing aren't on his side here, as I could see him struggling with defending speed on the outside. Offensively, though, Demers could be useful. He's shown in previous seasons in the NHL to be a capable but not great playmaker from the blue line, and he has some shooting talent. Overall, I could see Demers putting up good offensive numbers while being a more than capable defender for the Condors, but there's a chance that those skills have degraded as father time catches up, and he isn't capable of being more than just a defensive defenseman who can occasionally chip in a point or two. Lastly, along the blue line here, let's talk about Markus Niemelainen. Niemelainen's game is really easy to describe. He's not going to do much on offense. Him finding the score sheet is more happy accident. That's not to say he doesn't have offensive skills, although his offensive skill set is, let's call it AHL average on a good day. He's just very conservative in his puck management and isn't going to do fun things like leave his blue line during offensive zone cycles or join the rush. His skating isn't bad either, although he's never going to be mistaken for a speedster. But he does have good edge work and he is mobile, which helps him defend his blue line in above average fashion. In zone defensively, he's big and mean in corners and at the net front, but also has good awareness and knows how to play physically without hurting his team with a penalty. He's someone I'd look to pair on the second pair with a good offensive risk taker to kind of bring balance to the force there. Some other notables on this roster. One is Xavier Bourgault. Bourgault is another teenager with a first-round draft pedigree that will be making his pro debut in the AHL this season. To be fair, he turns 20 on October 22nd, so please wish him a happy birthday if you see him, but still, he starts the season as a teenager. Bourgault has good offensive tools, but there's a fair amount of work to be done here in his development. He's got shooting talent, but it's not a hard shot. It's more that he adds deceptive layers to a shot that makes it dangerous. His playmaking vision and puck skills are good, but not great. He's an okay skater. My biggest concern with him are about his ability to handle the physicality and pace of the AHL. He's 172 pounds, according to the AHL website, and hasn't been the best at battling through contact in juniors. He'd also get pushed to the perimeter rather easily, which is problematic. He wasn't a big play driver in juniors, and while that's not critical to be successful, he's going to need to be more of a primary play driver in the AHL and get to the inside if he wants to press for NHL duties, which I assume that he does. Last for the skaters, let's talk about Tyler Tullio. How Tullio's offense translates to the AHL is a legitimate question. He has a good skill set. He's a capable playmaker with good puck skills. He's a good but not great skater. But Tullio never seemed to find a shooting opportunity he didn't like. He's a talented shooter, but he's very trigger happy, very Elmer Fudd-like in his shooting habits. That's fine in juniors where he could fire missiles past hapless, overpowered goalies, but that seems unlikely to work in the AHL. Tulio's defensive game is also basically non-existent. He has good raw tools, but I think there's a chance he struggles to adjust to the AHL this season. That is it for the skaters. Let's move on to the goaltenders. Moonshine for the first time, Sir not appearing in this film. We do, however, have veteran goaltender Calvin Pickard. Pickard was very good for a very bad Griffins team on defense. He'd often stand on his head and make saves, but just couldn't get any goal support. Case in point, 12 times last season, Pickard put up at least a league average save percentage and held the opposition to 3 goals or less, and the Griffins still lost. Pickard is athletic and can explode post to post and make tough saves. He tracks the puck well, can handle when things break down in front of him. However, he's aggressive and prone to anchoring on shooters and gets caught when passes do get through. His movement is improved, but there's still some work to be done there. This should be a better season for him, as the defense ought to be better than Grand Rapids last year, which is a very low bar to clear. And the team should be able to give him some goal support when he's not able to steal the show. I don't think he'll be able to stand on his head, but he should be an above average starter for what is otherwise a pretty deep and good Condors team. Lastly, let's talk about Ryan Fanti. Fanti only got 1 game in Bakersfield last season, and it did not go great. But 1 game is nowhere near a useful sample size. Fanti is a good-sized goalie who has a solid skill set. He tracks the puck at a high level, he's technically sound, and he shows a lot of composure in the face of chaos in front of him. His athleticism isn't anything above average, which for a goalie is technically sound and large as he is. That's okay, but he struggles getting post to post in time to make those big, flashy cross-crease saves. However, I still think he should be likely the backup for the Condors this year, and one that should be someone they work to develop is Calvin Pickard is who he is at this point, but Ryan Fanti has a ceiling that he could hit that's much higher. Those are all the skaters. Let's pull back and talk about the team as a whole. Some quick thoughts. This team already looks solid, and then you remember they have guys who could come down and help them when they get healthy. Tyler Benson, Carter Savoy, Raphael Lavoie, and Vincent Desharnais all start the season on various forms of injured reserve. Desharnais seems to be the likeliest to get healthy first, but he also has a chance to stick with Edmonton. Still, the Condors look to have a roster that can finish at the top of the division. With a few good breaks, possibly some healthy reinforcements from Edmonton. Nobody gets hurt up in there, so they don't have to suffer some call-ups. They could be a team that's a real threat to do damage in the Pacific Division this year, should things break their way. That is our time with Bakersfield. We are going to take a break here. After the break, we will get to Abbotsford, Henderson, and San Diego. And then we're going to take another break. This division is massive. If you're just here for one of the Pacific Division teams we already talked about, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, check us out on social media. Links to our social media, other podcast places, our merch store can all be found in our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. We're going to run some ads, pay some bills. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. We are back from break. By we, I mean exactly one person, me. I am flying solo here today. But let's get back to business. Let's talk about the Abbotsford Canucks. Their 21-22 team record, 39-29. That was good for 5th place in the Pacific Division. Their coaching staff, new head coach, Jeremy Colleton, 46-42 as an AHL head coach in his career, 1 playoff appearance, 2-1 in AHL playoff series. His assistant coaches are Greg Agnew and Jeff Ulmer. The additions to the Abbotsford Canucks this year: Arshdeep Baines, Miles Amon, Linus Karlsson, Philip Johansson, Quinn Schuneman, Wyatt Kalniuk, Christian Wolanin, Chad Nychuk, and Colin Delia. The subtractions: Madison Bowie, Sheldon Rempel, Nick Patan, Justin Bailey, Ashton Saltner, Adam Brubacher, and Devontae Stevens. Let's talk forwards here that are on the Abby Knox. Let's stick at the top with the top 6. In no particular order, let's start with John Stevens. A good season last year from Stevens. Yes, he has some offensive skill, but none that really stick out to an above average degree. His skating is average at best. He's an okay shooter. He shot 19% last season, which is not going to be sustainable from him. So expect that goal total to come down a bit. He's got decent playmaking vision and puck skills. His value is more in his defensive awareness and ability to kill penalties effectively. He showed that he could also force power plays to be careful, as he scored 6 shorthanded goals last year. I'd expect Stevens to be a useful center that can chip in some offense, but is best as a defensive stalwart. Justin Dowling is apparently injured with no timetable from return. It's always good to see that AHL teams are already in mid-season form and injury reporting timelines, so good on them for that. We're going to make the assumption that Dowling gets healthy and contributes to Abbotsford at some point this season. So that's why he's included here in our preview, even though he isn't with the team right now. When he does show up, Dowling has a solid skill set. He has high-end puck skills. Well, he's not a sniper. He's able to finish around the net, but he's not a very good skater. However, he makes up for that with hockey IQ that allows him to see moves ahead. He's not a bad defensive player, but he's not a great defensive player. Most of that comes from his desire to push the pace up the ice quickly because he doesn't skate that well. He wants to join the rush. He's got to kind of get ahead of things. But that causes him to leave the D zone early, which causes him to, occasionally get burned doing that. When he is active, though, he should be an offensive leader for the Abbey Nucks night in and night out. Let's talk about Will Lockwood. I think Will Lockwood has a chance to get time in Vancouver this season. Not because his offensive skills have blossomed per se, but because what you're looking for in a guy to come in and play energy line minutes and that fourth line kind of role in the NHL, that's Will Lockwood's skill set. He's a very good skater, but he's never turned that into production on, rush chances. Likely as the rest of his skill set is pretty average at best, he can only leverage his skating so far. But Lockwood has shown ability to use his skating as an effective forechecker who can create pressure and force turnovers. He has a good work ethic and can battle well along walls and be physical. It's not highlight reel work, but he's good at it. And he's what most teams are looking for in kind of that bottom 6 call-up role. If he can find more offense this season, I think he could be more useful to Abbotsford, but I'm not sure that's very likely. The, most interesting player in Abbotsford's forward group, I would say, is Danila Klimovic. We've talked a lot in some of our season previews how many teenagers are going to be in the AHL this season. It's a lot. And we said we expect just about all of them to struggle in some capacity, as history has shown that the AHL is a big step up in competition, and nearly all teenagers, regardless of skill set, struggle with that leap. We can call Danila Klimovic proof of this concept. Klimovic is a prototypical power forward. He's physical, has very good puck skills. He can be a lethal sniper, but he's not a good skater, though. He powers through bad mechanics with brute force to get where he needs to go, but it definitely hampers him in small areas. I think that lack of skating materializes in why he can struggle and ultimately get healthy scratched at times. It's hard to say if last season's trial by fire for him was helpful, but he's back in the fire again this season. Let's talk about Carson Vogt. For one thing's for sure, he's going to need to find his game this season, which isn't impossible. I don't hate his skill set. His biggest asset is his ability as a forechecker, despite not being a very good skater. His forechecking ability is almost purely hockey IQ and reading and anticipating passing lanes and flow of play. Offensively, I'm not as high on his skill set. I still think he's got an above average shot, but he needs to shoot more often and do a better job of being a passing option in the offensive zone. Defensively, I like him for a lot of the same reasons. A lot of the same reasons I like his forechecking, rather. He reads the play well, anticipates well. He's able to shut down plays before they happen. All being said, I'm not counting on a ton from him from the offensive side of the puck. I think there's some potential here, but I'm not holding my breath after the last 2 seasons looking at his stat lines or, seeing some of his film. Defensively, I think he carries some value. As a forechecker, he definitely carries value. But as a playmaker or as a primary offensive driver, I don't think it's there. And I don't know that it ever comes. Fresh off a send-down from the Vancouver Canucks, Sheldon Dries. With Nick Patan and Sheldon Rempel both departing this offseason, Dries becomes one of the primary Abbotsford scorers from last year left to produce. Offensively, he has above-average puck skills and good playmaking vision. He knows when to pull up on the rush and find trailers. It can make quick, accurate passes in tight. His biggest strength offensively is his shooting talent. We've always thought highly of his shot, but he really showed up last season. We made the mistake of calling him to cool off from a shooting percentage that seemed unsustainable. It was 24.5%. I don't doubt the talent, but I struggle to believe that he can keep that up this season. That's just such an insane number. So again, sorry, Mama Dries, if you're listening. I believe Sheldon can shoot, but that's such a big number. I don't know how he sustains that. He's a good skater, but isn't a big part of the transition game. Defensively, Dries is solid in his own end. He's able to contribute. He hustles back to make plays in the defensive zone, but it's not his strength. While he's in Abbotsford, though, as I expect he's going to see a couple more cups of coffee with Vancouver, I expect him to be the offensive leader again this season. He's probably going to score at at least 30-goal pace, and that's something that the Abby Nucks are going to need. All right, let's switch over and talk about the defense. Let's start with the newest addition in Wyatt Kalynuk. Kalynuk was a surprising let-go by the Blackhawks after not offering him a QO in the offseason. Kalynuk's known for his offensive game. He's a solid skater who likes to jump in or lead the rush. He activates off the blue line with a high frequency that I like. In transition, he's capable of eluding forecheckers with just his skating alone. His puck skills and playmaking vision are good, but they're not great. He's not a creative playmaker, but he finds teammates nonetheless. On the defensive side of the puck, well, yeah, it's not great. Kalynuk's offensive instincts don't usually leave him good places for effective defensive zone play. At the AHL level, he's able to be a net positive with what he brings on offense, but his defense needs to make steps forward if he's ever going to be an all situations defender at the AHL level, or if he's going to be knocking on the door of an NHL call-up. Let's talk Guillaume Brisebois. I think it's safe to say at this point that the offense is never going to be a standout part of Breezy's game. He's shown some flashes in the past that he could make big plays and get on the score sheet, but those moments never seem to materialize more consistently. He's still a solid skater who can defend well on both the rush and the cycle. He's not terrible in transition, getting pucks going the other way from dump-in retrievals or from turnovers in the defensive zone. But I think he's just likely a sound defenseman that won't make a ton of offense. He'll chip in points, but it won't be a regular part of his game. Teams need those kind of players, though, so he still has value, but there seems to be a big lack of upside. Jet Wu was once a promising young prospect who was going to chip in a fair amount of offense while being a physical and reliable defender. Unfortunately for Wu, that development to get him from juniors to that player in the NHL has not gone well. Case in point, Wu spent a fair portion of last season playing forward on the fourth line. Wu's offense has also never really materialized in the AHL, and a lot of this comes down to processing speed. Wu routinely feels pressure early and will make safe and simple plays instead of looking to set up teammates to threaten to score himself. Not surprisingly, his puck skills and playmaking vision are below AHL average at this point. He still has a hard shot, but he rarely ever puts himself in position to take it off a good setup or in dangerous real estate instead of just kind of launching pucks from distance and crossing his fingers. Defensively, though, Wu still has something to offer. He's physical and can separate forwards from the puck. He's a good enough skater to keep up with the pace, but he still seems to struggle with processing speed. Overall, Wu can be a useful defenseman, especially paired with a more offensive-minded partner. Jack Rathbone would probably be his ideal partner if he was in Abbotsford, but Wu needs to get better in his decision-making if he wants to make a bigger impact for Abbotsford this season. Last but not least, let's talk about the addition for Christian Wolanin. I expect Wolanin to be the Canucks' first call-up on defense when they need a body that's more veteran than it is giving a youth a look. Wolanin's game should be useful to the Abby Nucks, provided two things. A, he doesn't get called up, which is probable to happen during the season at some point, and B, he doesn't get injured. He's played just 81 games since the 18-19 season. Assuming that he was slated to play 76 in each season, that's just 36% of the games he's played, theoretically, over the last 3 years. Still, Wolanin's game is an offensive one. He's going to activate off the blue line during the cycle and jump into the rush. He has good, but not great playmaking vision. His puck skills are closer to league average. He's a good shooter and can beat AHL goaltenders cleanly from mid-range, though. He's not a bad skater, but just strong enough to power through bad mechanics to build good speed. Defensively, he's not great. A lot of his offensive instincts lead him to not be well positioned to play defense. He's decent defending his blue line he's decent in defending his blue line, and he's decent against defending the cycle, but doesn't always have the awareness to pick up on small details or find off-puck threats. He's still a valuable asset, but he needs a steady partner who has chemistry to get the most out of him. A few other notables on the roster here. Linus Karlsson, he has a skill set that not a lot of other players do. Not so much because it's exceptional, more than it just seems like an uncommon collection of tools. His primary weapon is his shooting. He has a wicked shot release that's easily NHL caliber. He's an above-average playmaker with better puck skills. His skating isn't great, and he struggles to play with tempo. That's not terribly unusual, but he's an excellent defensive player. Hustles and swarms puck carriers at the right times, good stick placement, picks up threats away from the puck. You don't see that a lot from good shooters with puck skills that aren't great skaters. But that's what he brings to the Abby Nucks this season, and I think he's going to be a good value for a bottom six role to start the year that could, trend upward as the season goes on. Last, we have to talk about Arshdeep Bains. Yes, I realize that name sounds like a name of an upper tier comic book villain, but he's an undrafted prospect and has an interesting skill set. He has high-end puck skills and playmaking vision, and is going to find passing lanes and set up teammates across Royal Road in eye-opening ways. His edge work as a skater is impressive too. You'll likely see him pull off a spin move on a defenseman at least once this season. But he lacks a separating gear with his speed, and he's also shown some tunnel vision during transition. He tries to drive the middle lane most of the time, which is good. But he ends up turning the puck over at times by insisting on attacking the center when he's better off going wide and finding trailers or utilizing teammates. He tries to turn those moments into one-on-one battles to gain the center lane, and that's not always effective. He's a decent shooter too, but I don't think he's going to snipe many from mid-range. Defensively, he's a high-effort player, but he tends to get sucked in and try to do too much at times and leave his assignments open in favor of jumping into the play to pressure the puck carrier. He's an interesting player to keep an eye on this season as he's going to make some splashy plays, but he's going to need to develop more before he's ready for a prime role on this team. Those are the skaters. Let's talk about the goaltenders. Michael DiPietro. I don't know why I always get that name wrong, even though I know what it is. Michael DiPietro comes into this season as the unquestioned starter and will hopefully be given a massive, massive workload, if nothing else, to make up for lost time. Assuming he stays in Abbotsford all season, and I say assuming he stays in Abbotsford all season because it was reported in July by Rick Dollawall that his agent had permission to talk to teams about a trade, which is not surprising given what's happened with him. We won't get into that, but I imagine most people are aware that he's not had the most pleasant experience. DiPietro brings a good skill set to the net, though. He's an explosive athlete who moves well. However, he struggled to track pucks through heavy traffic. Personally, I'm rooting for DiPietro to find his game and succeed, but I don't know if I expect that this season. The other goalie in nets, we're not going to talk about Colin Delia. He's a known quantity, and he should not be battling for time over Artur Silovs, so we're going to talk about Silovs instead. And he's just another talented goalie who has not played. He has 37 games played since the 1920 season. And he has talent too. He's got high-end athleticism, a big frame. He moves incredibly well. He has a lot of those elements that you cannot teach a goaltender. But he struggles in a lot of the details, but ones that you can teach. His puck tracking has been shaky. His rebound control also a little shaky. And he's letting goals from bad angles that he shouldn't with stronger technical abilities. All in all, goalie coaches Marco Tenorius and the legendary Ian Clark should have a lot of good attributes to work with in both DiPietro and Silovs, and hopefully their increased playing time this season will lend itself to leaps forward in development and production. Those are all the skaters I want to talk about on Abbotsford, so let's pull back and talk about the team as a whole, kind of a loose and general sense. I'm going to be doing an episode a little bit down the road here where we get into an overview of the entire season. Again, I apologize for being a little bit behind on things. Stuff is happening behind the scenes. But let's talk about the Abbotsford Canucks as a whole. When everyone gets healthy, this team should be a playoff team in the Pacific. With Dowling and DiGiuseppe on the IR, the offense is going to be a problem. Should that group miss extended time from Abbotsford, the Abby Nucks could be in trouble here. There should be enough on the blue line and the net to hold down the fort and be competitive in games, but without those forwards, I could see this team struggling to win games. That is all the time we have for the Abbotsford Canucks. Let's move on and talk Henderson Silver Knights. Henderson's 21-22 record was 35-33. That was good for 6th place in the Pacific Division. Their coaching staff is Manny Viveros, who is 59-47 as an AHL head coach, 2 playoff appearances, and is 1-2 in AHL playoff series. Their assistant coach is Jamie Heward and Joel Ward. The additions to the Silver Knights this season are Byron Frais, Sheldon Rempel, Spencer Fu, Zakary Maninin, Kyle Marino, Alex Swedlikov, Daniil Chaika, Lucas Cormier, Brandon Estes, Darian Skjoch, Jordan Paperny, and Michael Hutchinson. The subtractions are Sven Bartucci, Jack Dugan, Ben Jones, Matt Boudin, Alan Quine, and Ian McCoshen. Let's talk about the top 6 forwards that are happening in Henderson. Let's start with Sheldon Rempel, a finalist as the 21-22 Best Forward Award category at our award show. Rempel's game is built on a great offensive skill set. He has great hockey IQ and can see moves ahead. He has very good puck skills, especially in tight. His playmaking vision is excellent. He's a good shooter too, and finally put up the shot volumes last season to hit solid goal totals. Defensively, he's underrated. He has the work ethic, the awareness, and the ability to break up plays in the defensive zone, and he does on the regular. I think he likely sees time with Vegas this season, and he should be a high impact player for Henderson. Next, let's talk about Jonas Ronbjerg. Ronbjerg went from a prospect no one was talking about to getting 30 games with the Vegas Golden Knights last season and put up a 50-point pace in AHL games. Ronbjerg starts the season with Henderson, but likely will get a call-up or two at some point. His game has made solid progress since 2021. Again, he was a prospect nobody was talking about. He's always been a solid skater with a good work ethic and a forward with a high hockey IQ, but his shooting has taken a step forward. His playmaking vision, puck skills have taken steps forward. Ronbjerg also has value as a solid forechecker and a battler along the wall. Defensively, he's solid too and can break up plays with his stick and smarts. The captain of the Stockton Heat last year, Byron Frais, comes over to Henderson and is a do-it-all veteran center who has been a captain or assistant captain 6 times in his AHL career. Frais won't wow you with his puck skills or skating or his ability to read and process the game but his ability to read and process the game in all 3 zones are strong, and that's the core of his game. He's also an underrated sniper who scored at a 20-goal pace in 5 straight seasons. Defensively, he's solid and can kill penalties as well as threaten with shorthanded scoring chances. He has 7 shorthanded goals in his AHL career, and that was a big part of Stockton's power kill last season. He'll bring quality veteran leadership, a good scoring threat, and solid 2-way play to the Silver Knights this year. Spencer Fu comes to the Silver Knights after 3 seasons in the KHL. Fu played 2 years with Stockton before going to the KHL, so this isn't his AHL debut, more of a return. Fu's game is best described as a power forward. He's physical, but not overly so. But more, he has a nose for the net, and while he's a reasonably good shooter, more of his goals come from tips, rebounds, backdoor plays on the rush. He's also shown flashes of higher-end playmaking vision. He's just an average playmaker overall, but every once in a while, he'll, wow you with a behind-the-back, no-look kind of pass. His puck skills are mixed. He can deke defenders, but he also struggles to maintain control of pass receptions, and sometimes will lose the puck just on his own. All in all, he should be a useful offensive player for the Silver Knights, but is likely checking in on the second line. One of my favorite players to watch in the AHL last season was Pavel Dorofeev. He's not the most talented, but is definitely one of the most entertaining and electrifying players. He made a lot of strides in his development too. His shot has become a much sturdier weapon. His skating has improved. Dorofiev's outstanding ability, though, has always been his hands. He is a dangerous dangler who can walk through AHL defenders if they're not careful, and occasionally they're not, and he makes them look bad. Dorofiev's one area of weakness tends to be his game away from the puck. He has a tendency to kind of float around a little bit if he's not directly involved in the action and doesn't get open away from the puck as often as he could. While his defensive game has also taken steps forward, he also still gets passive in the defensive zone at times. Dorofiev is a good player and fun to watch. I'm hoping for a breakout season from him with more developmental steps forward on some of those skills that still need a little bit of rounding out. I was surprised to see Brennan Brisson not make the opening day roster for Vegas, but their loss is Henderson's win. Brisson's game is an offensive one. His primary weapon is his shot. His shot is high-end for the NHL. It's probably the most lethal shot in the AHL this season. He has very good puck skills too and can dangle through defensemen. However, he tends to trust his ability to deke a little too much and can try to play one-on-one too often when higher percentage plays are available. That said, he's a skilled playmaker, but doesn't utilize his playmaking skills as often as he should. His skating is good, but it's not great. He has the speed to be effective, but not enough to push the tempo to 11. Defensively, he's not great. He's very much a forward focused on scoring every time he's on the ice. And while he should score a bunch of goals this season, a pinch more defensive effort wouldn't kill him. Those are the forwards. Let's shift over and talk about the defense. Daniil Miramanov is off the IR just in time to make this season preview. There is one benefit about being late is that I get to include guys like that who didn't quite make the first day, but are, there now. Miramanov brings a solid skill set to the Silver Knights blue line. Offensively, he has a lot of traits that you'd want to see that show off a good hockey IQ. He has a good timing activating off the blue line. He has good playmaking vision, good puck skills. He's a above average shooter that knows how to get around shot blockers and put the shot through traffic onto the net. Defensively, he's good enough. He's not a physical defender, which is odd given that he is a big, strong, grown-ass man. Overall, though, the aspect that's holding him back from more time in the Vegas Golden Knights side of the city is his skating. He doesn't have great edge work, doesn't have good straight line speed. Neither are bad. They're, probably around average for the AHL standard, given the rest of his skills. But if he wants to make more progress as an impact player and have Vegas start thinking about keeping him full-time, his skating has got to make some strides forward. No pun intended. Next, let's talk about Peter Delabatore. A good rookie season from him. His game is based around his skating. He's an excellent skater with good burst, solid mechanics. He uses that ability in transition. He'll beat forecheckers with his feet, jump in and join the rush, and create offense as a fourth forward entering the zone. He's also good on the flip side defending transition by using, again, his skating. It's the base of his game. And he's able to step up and kill plays at the blue line. However, the rest of Delabatore's skill set lags behind. He's got decent playmaking skills and decent playmaking vision and puck skills. He lacks the ability to weaponize it, though, by manipulating defenders and getting teammates open. He makes more just kind of basic plays to guys who are obviously open as opposed to slipping passes through traffic. Defensively, he's good at defending his blue line, like we said, but isn't as effective in zone. All in all, he has value, but he needs to take steps forward to be a bigger impact player. Next, let's talk about Leighton Ahak. Ahak is a defensive defenseman. He's not physically imposing or particularly mean, but he will make hits and throw his body around, but it's not his primary skill in defense. He defends more through awareness and details. He's excellent at picking off puck threats up and keeping them covered. He's good at getting his stick and clogging up passing lanes. Offensively, he's not giving you much. Even though he scored a goal this season, it was his first career AHL goal, and it was a backdoor tap-in that still had to sneak its way past John Gillies. His skill set just isn't suited for offense, and that's fine. Every team needs defensive-minded guys, but I do think that limits his AHL potential. Last guy we're going to talk about as being part of the top four defensemen for Henderson this season is Caden Korczak. Not the most amazing rookie season, but I thought Korczak was still solid. The skill set isn't one that lends itself to a ton of offense, though. His puck skills, shot, and playmaking vision are all around AHL average. Korzak's best skill is still very valuable, but doesn't always translate to the score sheet. That's in transition. He's an absolute monster at turning dump-ins into quality breakouts. He routinely beats forechecking pressure with ease. They may not stand out as something you see in highlights or in game recaps, but it's a huge part of keeping the ice tilted in Henderson's favor. In the defensive zone, Korzak is solid and able to be an effective defender and penalty killer. He doesn't play the sexiest game, but Caden Korzak is a valuable part of the Henderson Silver Knights blue line, and do not let anyone tell you otherwise. Some other notables here, we have 3 of them for Henderson. Number 1 is Ivan Morozov. We talked a few times in our season previews about players being all tools and no toolbox. Morozov is the opposite. He's all toolbox and not that many tools. What that means is he's an exceptionally smart player with amazing attention to detail in all 3 zones. He sees moves ahead, anticipates play at a high level. This allows him to find the score sheet at a level that is well above the tools that he has available to him. He's on the lesser side of average across the board. But his smarts and his work ethic make him an effective player. If he could develop more as a skater or a puck handler, he'd be easily a top 6 player for this roster. However, again, his game is powered by his brain and his ability to get to the places before others realize he's supposed to be there. His physical tools, though, they need work. And if he's going to make a bigger impact, that's the growth you're going to have to see. Gage Quinney was once again very good for the Silver Knights in an injury-limited season in 21-22. He's a solid shooter, has the puck skills and playmaking vision to also be able to set up teammates in tight. Quinney does need to trust his shot more, though, as it's one of the better ones in the AHL, but he doesn't get the volume to hit higher goal totals. Listen to the fans yelling, "Shoot, Gage." They're giving you good advice here. He's a decent skater, but lacks a true separating speed. His defensive game isn't the strongest, though, as Quinney isn't much of a battler. He's useful defensively, but in small ways, getting his stick in the right lane as opposed to checking a player. He should still be an impact player for the Silver Knights this season, but he could also take on a smaller role, given that the roster ahead of him is very stacked. Lastly, let's talk about Lucas Cormier. Cormier should be a staple on the Silver Knights power play, mostly because his shot is easily the biggest weapon he has in his arsenal. The problem is that he likes using it just a bit too much. At times, he'll wind up in fire shots from distance that are not the most effective use of the team's possession in the zone. Cormier can be an effective playmaker and has good puck skills, but he needs to find more balance with those in his shot selection. Defensively, Cormier is capable as an in-zone defender, but struggles to defend the rush as his skating is, we'll call it average at best. Cormier has tools and a clear path to be an impact player on this roster, but he definitely needs to refine his game to be a more useful player, especially, as we said, in his shot selection. Some goalies, we're going to talk about 3 goalies, and I'll explain why in a second. First, we have to start off with the obvious workhorse, or at least what should be the obvious workhorse, in Michael Hutchinson. He was a workhorse for the Marlies down the stretch last season. He started 17 of their final 19 games of the season. While he put out strong showings, overall, I don't think he was very good. However, I'm not ready to write off the 32-year-old Hutch the Clutch just yet, because he still has the markings of a solid goalie at the AHL level. He reads the play well, he moves well, his structure is solid. Behind what should be a very solid team, I still think he's capable of getting the job done. Wow. Now, that being said, he is 32. Father Time is going to catch him at some point, and he did look rough around the edges last year. But I believe there's still a useful AHL starting workhorse goalie in Michael Hutchinson. Isaiah Seville was sent down to the ECHL today, which likely cements the backup role to Yuri Patera, which is a head-scratcher for me. But okay. With Logan Thompson having graduated to the AHL, the Silver Knights last season got respectable goaltending from Yuri Patera and Dylan Ferguson, but a very clear lower quality of play. Then Isaiah Seville came to town, and like Thompson, I believe Seville is a future NHL goalie. He moves incredibly well. He tracks the puck at a high level. He has high-end technique. He's athletic and able to explode post to post when necessary. He should very much be able to work his way out of the ECHL, as he's too talented for that league. But here we are. Teams don't always make the decisions we expect or think are smart. It happens. Patera apparently earned the backup role in Henderson all to himself, which, again, is surprising. Patera has shown very average skill set at the AHL so far. He's got decent technical details, his average athleticism, but still can get post to post when he needs to. He's aggressive, but not overly so. Overall, I would say Jiri Patera is a goalie who's whelmed. He's a fine AHL backup, but I feel like he lacks upside to really make steps forward or give you more than 1 or 2 games of good performance, which makes sending him to the CHL seem like the obvious move to me and keeping Seville in town. But again, here we are. Those are all the skaters I wanted to talk about for for Henderson. Let's talk about the team as a whole and kind of their loose outlook. I don't think it goes as a surprise to anyone, but Vegas is firmly against the salary cap, which is good news for Henderson, as they should be able to keep the band together reasonably well, as Vegas just straight can't afford to be pulling guys up willy-nilly. That's important because this team is talented, deep, and well coached. My only concern with the blue line, which is, I think, has talent, but is young. There's a lot of talent there, but it's raw and requires refining and development. If that can happen for guys like Cormier and De La Torre, I think they should be a very difficult team to beat night in and night out. All in all, this team looks like a contender early on and should be in the hunt at the end of the season for a Pacific Division title and maybe a bit more. That is all the time we have for Henderson on this podcast and the season preview. We obviously will check back in with him throughout the season and talk about them more. But for right now, we are going to move on and talk about the San Diego Gulls. Their 21-22 record was 28-40. That was still good for 7th place in the Pacific Division. Their head coach is new to them, but old to the rest of us. He is Roy Sommer. He has 820 wins, 955 losses as an AHL head coach. Yes, you heard that record correctly. He has 13 playoff appearances and is 8-13 in AHL playoff series. His assistant coaches are Jason Clark and Chris Spar. The additions to the San Diego Gulls this year are Sasha Pastuov, Pavel Regenda, Chase DeLeo, Glenn Gaudin, Justin Kirkland, Logan Nyoff, Rocco Grimaldi, a huge addition, Oli Uelevi, Austin Strand, Colton White, Urho Vekanainen, and Callie Klang. The subtractions: Lucas Elvenes, Vinny Lettieri, Alex Limoges, Buddy Robinson, Morgan Adams-Moisson, Jack Badini, Trevor Carrick, Brennan Gooley, Jacob Larson, Brogan Rafferty, Greg Pattern, and Jeff Glass. A lot coming in, a lot going out. Let's start with the top 6 forwards and go with Justin Kirkland. Kirkland is a big-framed forward who I think makes a better winger than a center. He's very much a power forward, albeit doesn't find his stick on rebounds all that much, but is rather good winning battles and finding teammates for tap-ins. I don't think too much of his skating and think he's best suited as a kind of second-line winger who gets some power play time here or there when the unit needs fresh blood. However, he can, go off when he finds good connections with teammates and fits well within the system. I don't know if that's going to be him in San Diego this year, but it was him last year with Stockton, where I felt like he was able to outproduce what his skill set would dictate. However, I still like Justin Kirkland and think he has a valuable role to play on this Gulls team. Next, let's talk about Chase DeLeo. DeLeo returns to his home state after following Kevin Dineen to Utica for a season. The Gulls' freshly named captain has a solid skill set. He has good skating speed, a deceptive shot, and he can make plays in space, but he's best attacking off the rush. It's one of the reasons he was very successful in Utica. They played very much a attack off the rush style. Defensively, he's not a liability, but he's not someone I think of as being a defensive hero. He falls somewhere in that gray area in between. He returns to give the Gulls a good veteran leader and a solid first-line forward. Glenn Gaudin is a new addition to town, and his game is more effective and cerebral than flashy. He's a good playmaker whose creativity is impressive, but he's a much better passer than he is a shooter. His biggest area of weakness is his skating, which has progressed a lot to the point where it's now around league average, but it's still not a speed. He doesn't reach speeds that are going to allow him to push the tempo of the game. Defensively, he's responsible and isn't afraid to throw his body around, but has toned down the penalty minutes from his wilder junior days. I think Gaudin will still be a top 6 forward for the Gulls, and will probably split time between San Diego and get some looks in Anaheim this year as well. Next, let's talk about Jacob Perreault. We've said many times in the season previews to exercise caution for a lot of the teenagers with first-round draft pedigrees that are playing in the AHL this season. Even if they have NHL talents and potential, teenagers rarely do well in the AHL for a multitude of reasons. Jacob Perreault is one of those examples. Perreault has played 2 seasons in the AHL as a teenager with a first-round draft pedigree and a highly thought-of but raw skill set. He's still a high-level shooter, but his problem has been finding places for that shot. His off-puck game hasn't really helped facilitate his shooting abilities. He also has high-level puck skills, but will overhandle the puck at times. That's gotten better as he's developed, but it's very much a junior hockey habit, and it's still in his game here and there. Perreault's skating is actually decent, but he still struggles to play with pace despite good straight-line speed. One area that has made solid progress for Perreault is his defense. He's still unlikely to ever be a defensive hero, but he's progressing into being passable in the defensive zone, where in previous seasons, his approach to defense was, nope. Can Perreault make progress this year and become a more productive and complete player? I don't know. Why are you asking me? I'm not a future teller, but he's always had the tools to make a leap, and while he still has plenty of runway left as a 20-year-old, progress needs to be more evident this year. I think he can do it, but time will tell. Danny O'Regan comes off a solid season with the Gulls last year. His skill set remains good, but not great. His best hockey attribute is his playmaking vision and his ability to find teammates in dangerous ice. He has average puck skills. He's not a great shooter, but he's not a bad one. He can put a couple pucks past goaltenders. He's a solid skater who has better edge work and burst than top speed, but he still gets to where he needs to be. Defensively, he's not the best, but I think his defensive game is at least improved enough to be passable. He's not someone that I'm jumping up and down to put on the penalty kill, but he can do it. He should be good for solid production again with the Gulls, especially with what looks like an improved forward group all around. Lastly, let's talk about the big addition to San Diego that just happened a couple of days ago. And it begs the question, does Rocco Grimaldi belong in the AHL? Personally, I don't think so. But I'm not an NHL GM, nor am I in danger of ever being one. But Grimaldi's shown solid production in a bottom 6 role in Nashville, though. He has multiple seasons of 10 goals in the NHL, which isn't anything to sneeze at. Regardless, in the AHL, Grimaldi was 12th last season in points per game among players who played at least 30 games. In short, no pun intended, he was an offensive weapon. NHL caliber shooting, puck skills, playmaking vision. Because, as I pointed out, I think he's an NHL player. His skating is solid too, but he isn't fast enough to really burn guys, though, which is where he struggles a bit. Grimaldi, for all his raw tools, is 5'6" and 179 pounds. And while he has grit, tenacity, and a very good skill set, he's physically overmatched quite easily by bigger defensemen if they can get their mitts on him. That obviously doesn't limit his ability to create offense at the AHL level, but it's likely why NHL teams seem reluctant to invest in him. Since the Gulls have another good one in Grimaldi, and he should tear up and terrorize the Pacific Division this year. On for defensemen that we think will be in those roles for the Gulls this year, let's start with Olli Juolevi. The 5th overall pick in 2016 comes to the Ducks system after a volatile few seasons, where he played for 4 different organizations, including the Ducks. To say a fresh start with stability is likely good for him is a little bit of an understatement. Now, that doesn't mean I have a lot of faith in Juolevi's abilities, but if he was ever going to blossom, a fresh start in a stable environment is likely at least step 1. Juolevi's skills aren't bad, though. He's shown solid playmaking, vision, and puck skills. He's capable in transition. He's not an effective shooter, though. He also has poor skating, which has definitely been one of his downfalls. Because of his skating, which has seemed to deteriorate since his knee injury a few seasons ago, he's just been able to be burned on the rush by speed. Against the cycle, he's a more capable defenseman, but not much more capable. He applies pressure but lacks details in stick placement and picking up off-puck threats. I don't think Ulevi will be bad this season, but I also think the ceiling isn't terribly high. Let's move on to Axel Anderson. Anderson is a defensive-minded defenseman. He's been battling injuries a bunch and was limited to just 35 games last season, but he's probably the most reliable in his own zone on the goals when he is healthy. He has very good skating and that now allows him to step up in the neutral zone and kill plays early. He's a smart defenseman. He knows how to clog passing lanes, pick up threats off the puck. He can move the puck in transition and is useful in support in the offensive zone, but that's pretty much the end of his offensive abilities, as his raw tools just don't do a whole lot for him. If he's able to make strides on the offensive side of the puck, he could play a bigger role, but right now is a strong defensive zone presence and not a whole lot more. Drew Hellison plays a similar style to Axel Anderson. They're both defensive defensemen. Hellison is more physical, more mobile, and will jump into the play a little bit more often, though, which gives him offensive upside that Anderson hasn't shown. Hellison is also more useful on breakouts, and while he doesn't have the high-end playmaking vision, he's capable of moving the puck effectively in transition. Like Anderson, though, Hellison lacks raw offensive skills and won't be a big contributor in that end of the ice. Lastly, let's talk about Austin Strand. Apparently, the Gulls are just collecting defensive defensemen. Strand is another big physical defenseman who isn't going to provide much in the way of offense. He's not much more than a physical grinder in his own zone. He's not a great skater, struggles to defend against the rush because of it. His offensive skill set is below average pretty much across the board. He's mostly just a net front and board battle mauler. He's going to take some bad penalties along the way that he shouldn't. And if that doesn't sound like the pedigree of a guy who you'd want in your top four defensemen, well, yeah, same. Let's talk about some other notables here, and one that you may have been thinking belonged in that last group, and that's Nicolas Briard. Briard fits in the other notables because he played forward and he played defense last year. He was really productive, but we weren't honestly sure which group to put him in. He looks to start back this season on defense, but we ended up counting him as a forward last year. Offensively, he has good puck skills, and his playmaking vision has taken some steps forward. He has shooting talent and also did a better job of shot selection last season. He'll still throw some pucks away from distance, but it's gotten better. He has a high hockey IQ, which enables him to play both forward and defense with effectiveness. He has decent speed, but he lacks good edge work or agility. He's not the best at defending his blue line because of it. In his own end, he's decent, but he'll occasionally overcommit to pressuring the puck carrier with a double team and leave guys open behind him. He's also guilty of trying to leave the zone early and definitely has gotten caught with his hand in the cookie jar a time or two. He's capable at winning net front battles and grinding forwards along the boards, but I think he's better off as a defenseman. But we'll see if Roy Sommer wants to continue experimenting with him at forward. I'd be surprised if he did, though, but given that that's what he did a bunch last year, maybe there's a chance that Sommer decides to go that direction. Again, that would be surprising. Other notables on the team include Braden Tracy. If Braden Tracy was a ride at Disneyland, he'd be one of the best roller coasters in the country because his production is like a roller coaster in the dark. Soaring up hills, down hills, and then long stretches of just nothing. Then out of nowhere, just when you think the ride is over and it's going to pull back in the station, you crank up another hill and you go flying again. That's the Braden Tracy ride. You never know what's going to happen, but strap in because you never know when you're suddenly going to bank a corner and go 0 to 60 like a drag car. For example, here is his game log from the end of November. 7 points in the last 3 games before Thanksgiving. 3 points in his next 7 games. Then 6 points in 4 games. Then 3 points in the next 14. Some of that makes sense as Tracy's toolbox isn't full of a lot of big splashy tools. He's an average shooter with what I would call below average puck skills and skating, but he's got an above average hockey IQ and very good playmaking vision. He has a knack for finding small windows and one-touching passes to teammates for scoring chances. If he can develop more of those raw tools, perhaps we could get off the ride and find some more consistency. And he looks to be starting the season off cranking up a hill. But like we said, who knows where this ride goes from here? Last but certainly not least, let's talk about Hunter Drew. Drew made the conversion from defenseman to forward last season with a pretty good success rate. However, I don't think it's likely he repeats those point totals from his 21-22 season. Drew's primary skill is his shot. He's a talented sniper with a solid release. He's also very good at the net front and can box out defenders for tips and rebounds. He was also an incredibly effective bumper on the power play and will likely miss Alex Limoges. I mean, we all miss Alex Limoges, but he's not here anymore, unfortunately. He's in Manitoba where they don't have bears or parks or Wi-Fi. He's also, Drew is a capable battler along the boards and can extend the cycle in the offensive zone because of it. But that pretty much ends the exciting part of Hunter Drew's skill set. He's not a very good skater and isn't effective in transition because of it. He's tried to remedy this by exiting the zone early so he's able to join the rush as a trailer, but that has defensive impacts. Drew's playmaking vision and puck skills are also not very good. Most of his assists come on as rebounds or passes to teammates that were, an obvious continuation of the play, and that teammate just went and made that into a scoring chance as opposed to getting past a scoring chance. Despite being a former defenseman, Drew's in-zone defense is not great. Like I said earlier, he leaves the zone early, and that opens him up to being caught leaving the zone early and leaving the defense undermanned, which happened a few times last year. He's also surprisingly passive in his own defensive zone and doesn't pressure puck carriers with tenacity. I think he's still trying to feel out where his responsibilities in the defensive zone fall as a forward as opposed to a defenseman, and that's where you see some of that lost in translation kind of look from him. All that being said, Drew has a skill set that has value, but he needs other teammates to help unlock that value, primarily in transition and as playmakers to him in the slot or as a trailer. Those are all the skaters in San Diego that I want to talk about. Let's move on to the goaltenders, and we start with the only place there is to start, Lukas Dostal. Despite some rough outings and a playoff series prediction that blew up in my face, I'm still high on Lukas Dostal. He has a lot of raw skills you want in a future NHL goalie. He moves incredibly well. He manages his angles and depth well. He does struggle on occasion with tracking the puck, especially through traffic in front of him. His rebound control also occasionally leaves something to be desired, but he was solid for the goals in a lot of games where they played poorly in front of him last season. He does need to work on his consistency, but the defense in front of him needs to do that as well. I still believe that Lukas Dostal is the goalie of the future for the Ducks organization, but this definitely needs to be a season kind of like last one where we saw good progress, but I would very much like to see a more dominant season where he at least finishes in the conversation for end season awards. Maybe not, a finalist for best goaltender, but at least makes the ballot. I think that's where it would be very good for him if he did that, and he has the tools to get there. Backing him up, same as it ever was, Ollie Eriksson. Not a great season last year for Eriksson, but I got to give him the same benefit of the doubt as Dostal. The defense in front of him was far from ideal. OEE still has skills, though. He has a big frame and can fill the net. His technical structure is very good. He finds his angle quickly. Athletically, he's not great and struggles to make big explosive movements and make tough saves. And his consistency also hasn't been great, but again, the team in front of him not doing him favors. I think he's still a good backup and can transition to being more of a 1B starter, but I'm not holding my breath on that one for Ollie Eriksson. Those are all the skaters I wanted to talk about. Let's talk about the team as a whole. We'll do so in kind of a loose overview of the team. This is a team that has great forwards in the top six. They can compete with any top six forward group in the AHL. The depth up front is fine, but it's not great. I still want to believe in Lukas Dostal, even if others don't. The defense, though, is far from ideal and a clear-cut weakness on this Gulls roster. Outside of Briard, who's a makeshift defenseman at times, the group lacks puck movers and depth. It's a lot of, big ugly maulers and not a lot of guys who can put pucks the other way. If they can find success with that defensive core of just keeping the puck out of their own net, I think there's enough here for them to be a competitive team, but I think they'll travel an up and down path on the way to battling for a playoff spot instead. I think they should safely make the postseason, but there are definitely outcomes, or their range of outcomes definitely includes ones that are the outside looking in. We're going to take a break here, and after the break, we will get to Tucson, San Jose, and the brand new Coachella Valley. If you're just here for a Pacific Division team we already talked about, and this is your checking out point, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you're listening to us from so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, check us out on social media. Links to our social media, other podcast places you can find our show, as well as our new merch store. That can be found at our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. We're going to run some ads, pay some bills. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. And we are back from break, and we are here to talk about the Tucson Roadrunners. Their 21-22 record was 23-45. That was 8th place in the Pacific Division. Their coaching staff their head coach is Steve Potvin, who is 13-23 as an AHL head coach, 1 playoff appearance, 0-1 in official AHL sanctioned playoff series. Take that however you would like. His assistant coaches are John Slaney and Zach Stortini. The additions to the Tucson Roadrunners this year are Miros Kellerman, Laurent Dauphin, Jean-Sebastien Day, Adam Cracknell, Ronald Knott, Lucas Klock, Devontae Stevens, and John Gillies. The subtractions are Stephen Harper, Cedric Lacroix, Hudson Fashing, Terry Broadhurst, Matt Foley, Ty Emberson, Cole Holtz, Doyle Summerby, and Joseph Kojanash. Let's start talking about the top 6 forwards on this team, and let us start with Michael Carconi. Carconi's managed to carve out a good career as a middle to top 6 forward thanks strictly to shooting talent. Carconi is a very effective sniper, especially on the power play. He is very much going to miss Matias Michelli, though. Michelli was very adept at feeding him pucks that he could just unload on net. He has other offensive skills, but none that really stand out. That's Carconi. His puck skills are average. His playmaking vision, average. He's a decent skater who has short area burst to be an effective forechecker, but he's not going to put defensemen on their heels. Defensively, he's not given much, as off puck he tends to float a fair amount, which isn't ideal and probably why he struggled to be a consistent producer on offense. I expect another season of top 6 minutes from him, but I don't know if top 6 production will follow him without a solid playmaker to set him up. New veteran addition Adam Cracknell plays a solid veteran role as a scoring forward. He creates reliable offense with a good skill set, and he has good puck skills and is able to maneuver under pressure with the puck on his stick. He's a battler at the net front and down low. He's a capable shooter, but is at his best banging home rebounds at the net front and getting tips. He's also not as useful defensively. It's not for lack of effort, but rather lack of detail and awareness. When his assignment is away from the play and he's more prone to kind of floating and gets caught puck watching a bunch. Still, Cracknell has been at this a long time and continues to be, as he has offensive talents and can shoot. He'll find power play time and a top 6 role in Tucson this season. Laurent Dauphin returns to the organization that drafted him. He split the season between Laval and Montreal last year and put up a solid season in both. He's likely on the short list for veteran call-ups, but is a very useful skill set for Tucson. He's got a high hockey IQ to be able to read plays and see moves ahead, as well as a good work ethic. He's physical, gritty, and an excellent forechecker, despite not being the best skater. The rest of his offensive toolkit is right around average, as he has puck skills and playmaking vision, but I don't know if they're exceptional. He's a decent shooter and could probably score 20 goals in a full season if he puts up the shooting volume. Defensively, he has solid work ethic and has a grinding mentality, as well as a good use of his anticipation of play in the defensive zone. We'll see if he can replicate last season's results with a new team, but I'm hopeful, as he was a lot of fun to watch last season on a fun Laval team, although I don't know how fun this Tucson team is going to be. Ben Wings McCartney starts the season on IR, but the injury doesn't appear to be serious, and he should join the Roadrunners soon. McCartney had a good showing in Tucson last season, but one that saw him take time to find his game. He scored a hat trick in his debut and then scored just 3 goals in his next 23 games in Tucson. He finished the season strong with 12 points in his last 14, and McCartney has a useful skill set. He's a solid playmaker with good puck skills. His shooting is around league average. He's physical and does have some battle to him. However, he's not as effective in transition due to his skating, which is below league average. If Wings can recover from his current injury and make some steps forward with his skating, he could be somebody this year. If not, I still think he should be an impact player for Tucson, but less so. Let's move on to talk about Jan Jenik. Jan Jenik got yo-yoed quite a bit last year by Arizona, and yet still managed to perform at a high level in Tucson. He's maintained his playmaking vision that's well above average and borders occasionally on being great. He's a good shooter, and his 17 goals from last season certainly seem repeatable. My biggest concern from him is his skating. He's more than a step behind AHL average, some of which is bad mechanics, some of which is likely a lack of power. Jan Jenik is listed at 6'1", 161 pounds, which makes him 3 inches taller than me and 20 pounds lighter. That's an insane body composition for a professional hockey player. I don't know how he hasn't been trying to add more muscle to his frame, but he likely needs to if he wants to move his game forward, because that lack of power from a 161-pound frame is evident in his game. Last but not least for the forwards is Liam Kirk. Kirk looks up to make up for what was a lost season due to a knee injury that limited him to 8 games last season. I think he has good puck skills and playmaking vision and is an underrated shooter. He has good processing speed and reads the play well, but that knee injury is especially concerning as it's likely to directly affect his biggest area that needs improvement, and that's his skating, which I feel like held him back because it impacts his ability to play with tempo. Season-ending knee injuries don't usually lend themselves to improve skating the following season either. And a lot of times what you'll see in NFL skill position players is they'll come back from the knee injury the next year, but it's not till the second year that they really feel like themselves. We'll see what kind of progress Kirk has made, and if he can make progress in his skating, he can establish himself as a very interesting prospect in the Yotes system. Those are the top 6 forwards. Let's move on to the defensemen. Let's start with Victor Soderstrom. I think it's safe to say that Soderstrom's development has clearly stalled. A lot of the parts of his game that should have translated just haven't. Over in Sweden, Soderstrom was strong in transition and able to move the puck efficiently and often. But he's not done well on the smaller North American ice, as forecheckers have routinely gotten pressure on him and forced errors from him. In zone, his defense has also become quite suspect, as he hasn't been able to generate effective pressure along the walls and frequently loses positioning at the net front, despite being physically larger than the guys he's covering. There's still offensive upside here, though. He's an effective playmaker in the offensive zone. He still defends the rush well. He still has a strong shot that has, that he has a good ability to find the right spot to shoot. He activates off the blue line into the cycle. He's still a strong skater for a guy his size, but a lot of work needs to be done here to get him back on the trajectory of an NHL player. He has tools, but his toolbox and his ability to put them all together needs development. Cam Dineen spent most of the last season with the Coyotes. His offensive output improved a lot, but I'm suspicious that isn't sustainable. Of his 16 assists, only 6 were primary assists. Secondary assists are more or less kind of fluke events. They don't predict future assist production well. His skill set made some developments, but I don't think it stands out as one of a near point per game AHL defenseman. He's got okayish puck skills and playmaking vision and isn't much of a shooter. He's decent at getting shots through traffic, but isn't much of a scoring threat from his shot. He's good in transition, getting started. He's good in transition and can make solid first passes out of his own end, but that's about the end of contributions that I see from his score sheet. Defensively, there's a lot more to like. He's good in defending his blue line and can kill plays in the neutral zone. In zone, he's heavy on puck carriers, but he doesn't chase the play, which is a good attribute. I'm not sure where he falls on the depth chart given his lack of offense. I still think he's a top 4 defender on this team, but he could pair with someone more offensive-minded to kind of balance him and that person out. I wasn't thrilled when Vladislav Kolyanichuk last season made the Coyotes, but the Coyotes needed bodies last season, and he actually did okay in time in the NHL. He's got good skating and can be an effective defender against the cycle and the rush, but he struggles with coverage away from the puck, however. He's strong on puck carriers and know what he's supposed to do, but when the player's on the other side, he seems like he struggles to pick up guys behind him. He's decent in transition, but I wouldn't go as far as to label him a solid puck mover. His offensive skill set doesn't wow either. He's not a great playmaker. He's not a great shooter. His puck skills are probably around league average. He's got some value as a defensive defenseman, but he needs to work on developing the offensive skills that he has if he wants to make a bigger impact. Last for the defenseman for me, at least in the top four, is Cam Crotty. Crotty's a good skater, especially for a guy his size. His skating allows him to step up in the neutral zone and kill rush chances before they happen. In the defensive zone, he tends not to be as effective against the cycle as he lacks details like getting his stick in the right passing lane or scanning to pick up threats over his shoulder that are behind the play. Offensively, he doesn't do much as his skill set is not really tilted towards offensive production. And while he's only 23, I don't think his offense develops much past where it is right now. He can defend the neutral zone. He can kill penalties. He's good on puck as a defender, but he's not bringing much more than that. And I don't know that he's going to develop to do much more than that in his time in Tucson. Other notables on the roster, Jean-Sebastien Day put up a career year in his hometown of Laval for the Rockets. So it was surprising to see him sign in Tucson, but he follows Laurent Dauphin from Laval to the desert. He has a skill set that should help the Roadrunners offense. He has good playmaking vision. I like his puck skills, but they're not flashy. He has the ability to find open ice in the offensive zone, and he's a better playmaker than a sniper, but he is still an underrated shooter, I think. His skating isn't the best, and that explains why he gets a lot of cups of coffee in the NHL, but never seems to stick there. Defensively, he's responsible enough, but I wouldn't go so far as to call him a 200-foot player. Let's move on and talk about Nathan Smith. Smith should be a useful addition to the Roadrunners. As well, it should give him a good place to develop his game as he transitions from college to pro. Smith has good offensive skills. He's got very good puck skills. His playmaking vision is solid and occasionally flashes higher-end abilities. His shot is taking steps forward and is now approaching NHL caliber. He has a good nose for the net and can play the net front somewhat well. Smith's biggest issue, though, is going to be pace. He's not a good skater, and while he has puck skills and work ethic, he's not going to be strong off the rush or in transition. Defensively, he's shown good awareness in college, but we'll see how well that translates. Those are the skaters in Tucson. Let's talk about the last line of defense, the voodoo practitioners themselves, the goaltenders for the Tucson Roadrunners this year. Ivan Prosvetov had another bad season last year, and to be somewhat fair to him, the defense in front of him was bad. But it feels like his development hasn't been able to move forward the last two seasons. At 23 in the last season of his contract, he's going to have to make progress this season and post at least respectable numbers if he wants to give the Yotes a reason to re-sign him. His skill set still has something to offer. He still has solid athleticism that you just don't see in goaltenders that are as big as he is. However, he struggles with puck tracking, and he also needs to refine some of his technical game as he's letting too many goals squeeze by that shouldn't with better mechanics. Let's hope for John Gillies' sake, he doesn't have to live out of a suitcase this season. Gillies played for 2 NHL teams, 2 AHL teams, and 1 ECHL team last season. He ultimately got 20 games in the NHL, which was a career high, but I'm sure he'd like a little more stability this season. Gillies bounced around so much, it was a bit surprising, especially in the AHL, where he has a long track record of being a steady starting goaltender, and in most of the games that he was in, he looked like that, more or less. He's not a spectacular goaltender, but he's a better than league average starter in the AHL, and yet the Phantoms and Providence Bruins sent him packing for nothing. Gillies can hopefully bring his A game to Tucson, as the defense should be improved this season, but I still don't know that I would call it good on paper. Despite being 6'6", Gillies has constantly played like a goalie smaller than his size. He's good with his angles and a solid puck tracker, but his movement can get busy at times and his stance gets a little low, especially when chaos breaks out in front of him. Hopefully a season of stability in travel will give him a season of stability in net, but I'm not holding my breath. Those are the skaters I wanted to talk about in Tucson. Let's pull back and look at the team as a whole. Last season, the Roadrunners were generally very bad, but occasionally out of nowhere would win a 7-2 kind of game. I think this roster is better than last year's, but I still don't think it's good. I don't know if their Jekyll and Hyde problems ever go away, but I think they at least win more games this season and are realistically in the playoff hunt till the bitter end. If the Coyotes can send guys down like Michelli, Jack McBain, Giannis Moser, or others as reinforcements, the Roadrunners can have a more solid claim as a bona fide playoff team. But those moves seem unlikely as the Yotes have cap space to spare and are clearly in the blow it for Bedard sweepstakes, which, to be fair, they should be. I'm not positive that this team ends up in the playoffs, but they should at least be in the hunt for it, whereas last season they were very clearly out of the playoff race pretty early on. That is our time for Tucson. Let us move on and talk about the other team named after a Plymouth, the San Jose Barracuda. In the 21-22 season, their team record was 20-48. That was 9th place in the Pacific Division, which was last place, but this year would be second to last place. Their coaching staff is Steve McCarthy, brand new AHL head coach. He has a 0-0 record as a brand new AHL head coach. His assistants are Louis Moss and Kyle Hagel. The additions to the San Jose Barracuda this year include Brandon Coe, Tristan Robbins, Ozzy Weisblatt, Max Varanu, Mitchell Russell, Andrew Agazzino, CJ Cease, Patrick McGrath, Luke Johnson, Evgeny Svechnikov, Derek Pouliot, Strauss Mann, Aaron Dell, and Etu Makiniemi. The subtractions from the San Jose system as a whole, Joachim Blickfeld, Josef Garifa, John Leonard, Christoph Harabek, Kyle Topping, Lane Peterson, Mason Yost, Sasha Shemlevsky, Antoine Morand, Jaden Halbogawaks, Jake McGrew, Anthony Botetto, Alex Stalock, and Zach Sawchenko. Let's start talking about the forwards, and let's start with Andrew Agazzino. Agazzino continues to be one of the more productive forwards in the AHL over the past few seasons. I don't think he was utilized too terribly well in Belleville last season, but he still managed to put up 20 goals, 23 assists for 43 points in 66 games, which ain't too shabby. He's dangerous in the offensive zone and can shoot as well as set up teammates. He also has good puck skills and playmaking vision. His skating isn't great, but he can overcome that with his hockey IQ and other skills. He's also not afraid to go in the quarters and battle in front of the net, despite not being the biggest forward. His defensive game is solid, and he can be a penalty killer, albeit not one I'm overly excited about. He has power kill potential, which does help. He's still one of the most consistent AHL top-line producers and will likely be near the top of the stats column for the CUDA again this season. A big prospect that everyone is excited about is William Eklund. Eklund is first and foremost a playmaker with elite hockey IQ. He gets pucks through to teammates in the slot with a level of ease that's just remarkable. His game off puck is also high-end as he's able to find soft spots in coverage and attack backdoor areas. He's a good skater but has a relentless work ethic that sees him trying to raise the tempo of the game at all times. He's a good shooter, but it's probably his least good tool. Defensively, Eklund is solid in his work ethic, attention to detail, and his use of good skating shine through in his own end. I don't know if he shines right out of the gate, but Eklund is going to shine in the AHL this season at some point. The question is only how soon. Scott Reedy's game is pretty simple. He's a shooter with a nose for the net. He excels. He has a knack for finding rebounds and is one of the better garbage men cleaning up the net front in the AHL. His puck skills and playmaking vision are around league average, though. He'll make simple plays to teammates who are open and continue the cycle, but he's not going to make a regular habit of high-level playmaking. His skating doesn't buy him any favors, as he's got well below average foot speed for the AHL. However, as we said before, shooting talent is the rarest and most valuable thing in hockey, and when you have it, you're always going to be able to find work, and Scott Reedy has it. Brandon Coe is a big-bodied, mobile, offensive machine. He has a solid and deceptive shot release. He has high-end playmaking vision and puck skills. He regularly chains dekes together with pass and shot setups to keep goalies and defenders guessing. Coe has shown the skill set to be an immediate impact player in the AHL and in the offense. Coe has shown the skill set to be an immediate impact player in the AHL in the offensive zone. In the defensive zone, not so much. Co's willingness to get involved in the defensive zone has been less than desirable. Given the offense that he can create, I'm willing to give him a bit of a pass, but if the puck isn't going in for him, that lack of defensive effort is going to sting. Another interesting and highly touted prospect coming to the Barracuda side of things this year is Thomas Bordeleau. Bordeleau is an excellent primary playmaker. He's able to keep the cycle going with his puck skills and protect the puck, and then he'll spin off pressure and find teammates open in the slot for scoring chances with regularity. He's also a big puck mover in transition, even with average skating, but he has the smarts to manipulate forecheckers. He's an average shooter, but is capable of beating AHL goalies cleanly. In the defensive zone, Bordeleau is an asset with his attention to detail and awareness. His size and lack of higher-end skating are a concern, but he's able to play with pace given his hockey IQ and other skills. I think the physicality of the AHL could pose challenges to him, though. Daniil Gushkin's tools are an embarrassment of riches. He's an excellent skater. He has high-level playmaking vision. He's near elite with his puck skills, and he can beat goalies cleanly from mid-range with his shot. But wow, is there a lack of a toolbox there. Gushkin tries to do too much with the puck far too often. He occasionally seems like he's trying to make the SportsCenter top 10 on his way. He seems like he's trying to make SportsCenter top 10 on his way to scoring instead of just, scoring. That has led to a lot of turnovers and errors that are just head-scratching. He's a hard worker in his own end, but he'd engage in physical board battles at times that he was destined to lose at 5'10", 181 pounds. He's got to pick his battles a little better. There's a lot to like about Gushkin's abilities, but there's also a lot of refinement that needs to happen along the way. Ryan Merkley is someone that is a frustrating prospect at times. And I can understand that. He's made some progress, though, and I think that progress has been positive. He still has playmaking vision and puck skills that are high-end. He skates well. He's a good but not great shooter. In the offensive zone, he shows creativity and ability to execute plays at a high level. However, he struggled with the physicality of the AHL at times and is still inconsistent in defending his own end against the cycle, to say the least. I know there are definitely moments where a friend of the podcast, Kevin Lacey, has pulled his hair out watching Ryan Merkley play. The questions about his work ethic are still lingering around, and for good reason. But the talent is there for him to be a legitimate NHL defenseman, and he's not done developing at this point. A good veteran signing in the offseason for San Jose was Derek Pouliot. Coming off a career worst pace for offensive output last season in Henderson, I think Pouliot is in line for a bounce back this season. He's been one of the best puck movers in the AHL for a few seasons now, and he pairs that transition game with being a very good playmaker in the offensive zone with solid puck skills. His skating isn't great, and he struggles to defend the rush because of it. But he's also not the most disciplined defender of the cycle either, and doesn't have a lot of battle to him. Still, he has the ability to move the puck in transition as a dependable veteran, which is something the Cuda sorely lacked last season. I always struggle with this one. Artemi Knyazyev showed a lot of good and bad in his first season with the Cuda. The offensive skills look very good. He's an excellent skater and a huge asset in transition, beating forecheckers with regularity. He's active in the offensive zone and will jump into the cycle to facilitate offense. He's not a bad shooter, but I don't think 7 goals is a repeatable total for him. Defensively, well, Knyazyev was the patient zero of a lot of the defensive woes that plagued the Cuda last year, in my opinion. He'd step up in the neutral zone to cut off plays as early as possible. However, he was frequently too aggressive with those moves and easily bypassed, creating odd man rushes the other way. His defensive awareness was also stunningly bad in moments last season, regularly attempting to pressure puck carriers, completely unaware that wide open options were what he was leaving behind him. He was consistently better in his own zone against the cycle, but that was still not... He was consistently better against the cycle than the rush, but his ability against the cycle was not consistent, if that makes sense. Those problems are all fixable and something that good coaching should be able to see notable progress very quickly. But wow, do those problems need fixed as soon as possible. If Naziev can make defensive improvements, he can be a positive impact player for the CUDA this season, but those are a must if he wants to avoid the bench. Not a bad North American debut season for Senteri Ataka. There were real questions about how he translated to a smaller, more physical game, and I thought he answered them reasonably well. The smaller rink usually presents problems for defensemen in transition, but Hataka was solid moving the puck, especially when he used his skating to beat forecheckers and spearhead the rush. His other offensive skills are not great, though. His playmaking vision is making progress, but he still struggled to be consistent in his playmaking inside the offensive zone. He lacks polished puck skills, and his puck protection was frustrating to watch at times last year. He's not a bad shooter, but I don't think he shoots often enough. His shot selection is too conservative, and he seems to employ a pass-first mentality too often, even when he gets pucks on good setups for shots. On the defensive side, he was probably the CUDA's best defender, which is not saying a lot, but he was effective defending his blue line and against the cycle with a good stick and good awareness. However, his physical engagement was not always well-timed, and that did lead to some defensive struggles. There are good skills here with Ataka, but there's more development necessary for him to step up and step forward in the San Jose organization. There are a number of other notables on this roster. We're going to talk about two of them. One is Ozzy Weisblatt. Weisblatt's main skill is his skating, and he weaponizes it on breakouts and can weave through forechecking pressure and gain the offensive zone and make it look easy. The rest of Weisblatt's skill set is impressive. He's a very capable playmaker with very good vision and puck skills. His shot isn't good, but given his playmaking and transition prowess, I think that's fine. The biggest problem with Weisblatt is his game away from the puck. I think at times he tends to float and struggles to find areas for teammates to utilize him as a passing option. That keeps him from being a more impactful player without the puck, and it makes him easy to defend. He should still be a good complementary player this season and able to deliver through the neutral zone for teammates who aren't as fleet of foot, but I think his overall impact is not as high as it could be in his first season. Lastly, for the skaters, let's talk about Tristan Robbins. Robbins is an interesting prospect. He's a gifted playmaker with high-end puck skills. He's a solid sniper and should be able to put up double-digit goals this season should he play in enough games and shoot the puck enough. The talent is there. He skates well, but he doesn't always play with pace. My biggest concern with him is that his game tends to be very much from the perimeter. He struggles to drive play inside, which can work in juniors and throughout Europe, but in the AHL and especially at the NHL, that's going to limit his production unless he can make adjustments. Defensively, he's also not good and ends up chasing the play often instead of sticking with his assignments. Robbins has plenty of skill, but if he wants to make it as a professional in North America, refinements are still necessary. All right, we have three goalies to talk about here because, well, there are three goalies in San Jose on the CUDA side of things. Let's start with Aaron Dell. After being chased out of town at the end of the 1920 season, Aaron Dell is back in San Jose, although not on the side that he was before. Dell played admirably last season in Rochester in front of one of the more porous defenses in the AHL at times. He's 33 and Father Time is catching up with him, but it's not there yet. I think Dell still moves well. He still tracks the puck well. His athleticism has started to decline, but he's still got it enough to where he gets to where he needs to be. I think he should be at least a league average starter for the CUDA this season because I think their defense should be improved, and that should only benefit him. Eetu Makiniemi made his AHL debut last season with the Chicago Wolves. He posted a great stat line, looked impressive in games, and then was traded to the Sharks in the Brett Burns deal. Makiniemi is an average-sized goalie with great athleticism, and he relies on that athleticism a lot, though, as he's aggressive in his crease and can anchor on shooters, relying on his athleticism to recover in time if he's wrong. His puck tracking isn't great, and a lot of his technique still needs refining. However, he has a lot of the raw tools you want in a goalie and is still only 23. Last player we're going to talk about here for the San Jose Barracuda is Strauss Mann. An odd path to the AHL for Mann. A solid NCAA career, but no offers in North America sent him to the SHL. A good season in the SHL, and San Jose offers him a nice little one-year deal. Mann's a bit undersized, but he has great athleticism. He's able to get post-to-post quickly and make desperation saves. He handles traffic well. He tracks the puck well. His rebound control hasn't always been the best, and I imagine it'll be an area of focus for him now as he faces the best shooters he ever has. I think man could be an interesting project for the CUDA. I'm not expecting a lot from him this season, especially with 3 goalies on the roster, and he's likely going to have to fight for playing time. Those are all the skaters on the Barracuda that I wanted to mention in the preview. Let's pull back and talk about the team as a whole. Big makeover for the CUDA this season. Gone are longtime staples from the teal, orange, and white. Halbuga walks, Blickfeld, Sochenko, head coach Roy Sommer, Sir not appearing in teal this season. There's a lot more depth on this team, though, and a lot more dependable talent came here this offseason. I think it blends well with a prospect group that has exciting tools, but may require real development to be true impact players. How all that veteran talent, developmental progress of youths materializes is going to be determined by a rookie head coach with no prior experience. And that's where questions come in. This team should be talented enough to make the playoffs comfortably, as they're, in my opinion, a clear-cut better roster than at least 3 other Pacific Division teams right now. But beyond that, the progress of this team is going to be driven by the kids. If they can make steps forward and become more impactful players than you're likely to see from, teenagers, 20-year-olds, I think that they're a team that could make its way up the standings in the Pacific. I don't think they contend. I don't think they're that caliber of team, but they should be much better than last year's tire fire of a team. That's for sure. Lastly, in this overcrowded, too many team Pacific Division, we have the new kids. We've been going in order of standings from last season, and well, the Coachella Valley Firebirds don't have standings from last season. They have no 21-22 team record to talk about. So let's go right to the coaching staff. Their head coach is Disco Dan Bilesma, 35-19 as an AHL head coach. No playoff appearances because he was pulled from his AHL head coaching job to coach the Pittsburgh Penguins while he was there. His assistant coaches this year are Jessica Campbell and Stu Bickle. The additions to the Coachella Valley Firebirds are everyone. They are all new to this team. The subtractions, as we are going to count them as players who were under Kraken contract that played with Charlotte last year, are Connor Carrick, Dennis Chalowski, and Antoine Bibeau. Let's start breaking down the top 6 forwards as we see them. Number 1, can't start anywhere else, Andrew Podorowski. Podorowski has made a long career in the AHL by being an all-around very good offensive player. He has very good puck skills and great playmaking vision and a high hockey IQ. He's a solid shooter that has a quick release and is good at finding soft ice in the slot. He adds deceptive layers to his game and will look to pass, then rip shots high blocker. He's a decent skater, but doesn't have a top gear necessary to put defenders on their heels, but it doesn't really limit his game as he makes up for it with the rest of his skill set. Defensively, he's improved, but isn't someone I'm likely ever going to think of as a solid defensive forward because what he does best is offense. He knows it. Everyone knows it. All in all, he's someone who's going to drive offensive production, and if he can find the chemistry with line mates like he did with Stefan Nason last season, well, the sky's the limit. Max McCormick, next on the list, is a big-bodied, physical power forward who's best hanging around the net and just making chaos. He has good vision in the offensive zone under pressure as well as on the rush. He doesn't waste shot attempts, which is something I will always be a fan of, but he's just an above-average shooter. More of his goals are rebounds, tips, or redirects from the net front. He's not a bad skater, but he's not a good one either. He has okay-ish speed, but mostly because of his work ethic. His skating keeps him from being an asset in transition, though. McCormick knows his role in the offensive zone and does a good job focusing his time and energy on doing those things, being a power forward, being a net front presence, battling down low. But he does need line mates with complementary skill set to be able to reach the production that he's capable of given his skill set. Alexander True, one of the solid contributors last year to a well-balanced Checkers team. He has good finishing ability and has good puck skills in tight. His work ethic is impressive, and he skates hard every shift. Despite that work ethic, his skating keeps itself from putting defenders on their heels or playing with pace. I think he can be an effective top 6 forward in the AHL as a whole, but he's going to need someone else in his line to help transport the puck into the offensive zone. He is a high effort player, but that doesn't always power you to where you need to go. And he needs someone who can make it through the neutral zone without getting stepped to by a defenseman. Let's talk about Jesper Frodin. I like Frodin's game a fair bit. His puck skills and playmaking vision, they're around average, but his strengths are his skating and his shooting. His top speed isn't that fast, but his burst is impressive and he has solid edge work. Regardless, he should still be an asset in the neutral zone and on the power play, especially in breakouts on the power play, as he can attack east to west with his skating instead of just in straight lines. His shot is impressive more for the quickness of his release and the accuracy than necessarily the velocity. In his own end, he's solid if unspectacular. And while I don't think he should kill penalties, he can kill penalties in a pinch. Someone who already started to stand out for Coachella Valley in their, handful of games played early this season is Cole Lynn. There's a lot to like in Lynn's game. He finds soft ice in the offensive zone well. He has good puck skills. He's a decent shooter. He's physical. He's a battler. He has a nose for the net. He's not much of a playmaker and likely won't have any highlight reel assists, but he's able to keep the cycle going with small area passes. Defensively, he's merely okay, a fair amount of which seems to be effort-based. Skating speed is his main issue, but he possesses good enough skill sets to be an effective AHLer despite not being the fastest. Last of the forwards that we want to talk about here is Cameron Hughes. Hughes was a solid contributor for the Providence Bruins the last 2 seasons. He has very good puck skills and high-end playmaking vision, in my opinion. He makes creative passes and finds teammates for quality scoring chances. His hockey IQ also shows his ability to outthink opponents. Hughes' biggest weakness, though, is that he's not a threat off the rush because of his skating speed. He's not slow per se, but he lacks a top gear that scares defensemen and is occasionally late to get to the places he needs to be, even if he knows he needs to be there because his skating it's not up to par. His ability to play through contact, though, shines through, and he looks to have added some size in the last season or two so that he's more able to kind of muscle through contact. Defensively, I like his game a lot. He works hard. He's an asset that can clog passing lanes and cause turnovers and kill penalties. Unfortunately, he went down with an injury in the second period of the opening game for Coachella Valley. I haven't seen any reports on it yet, but hopefully he's able to join the roster soon and be healthy because he's a solid forward when he's in the lineup. Let's shift over to defense here and talk about Brogan Rafferty. Fun fact about Brogan Rafferty, he is legally blind in one eye. Rafferty, though, is nothing short of entertaining to watch. Offensively, he checks a lot of boxes. He's a smooth skater. He joins the rush. He'll lead the rush if you let him. With the puck on his stick, he has good puck skills and can deke through defenders. He's a creative playmaker and will come off the blue line behind the play as a backdoor threat. He's also a pretty good shooter as well, but he occasionally has some shot selection that I'm not a huge fan of. Defensively, he's not great. He's not terrible, but he struggles with details and consistency in his own end. I'm completely fine with that, and I'm more than willing to trade defensive reliability for offensive prowess off the blue line for a player or two. You have to have a couple defensive responsible players, but I'm okay with Brogan Rafferty not being the most responsible on his own end because of what he does on offense. He can create offense like few others can in the AHL. I think he should probably be the Firebirds' #1 defenseman and a staple of the power play. Going from an offensive-minded guy to a defensive-minded guy is Matt Tennyson. Tennyson is that defensive-minded defenseman. He's good but not great defender of his own blue line. However, in zone defense against the cycle, he is well above average. He's not the best in transition and will feel pressure to go glassing out a little bit earlier than I'd like to see. Offensively, Tennyson doesn't have a skill set that lends itself to being on the score sheet often. His playmaking vision, puck skills, and shooting talent are average to slightly below average at best. However, being a right-handed defenseman with defensive chops makes him a solid partner for one of the many lefties who are more offensively minded. Michael Kempny was a big piece of the Capitals Stanley Cup championship. And anytime you can bring experience like that into the organization and bring rings into the room, that has value. Kempny's game has changed a lot, though, as repeated injuries to his lower body have hampered some of his mobility. He still has straight line speed, but his defensive skating has never quite looked the same caliber since those injuries. He's a capable defenseman in all three zones who plays a smart but patient game. He doesn't have a great shot and likely won't snipe any goals this year, but he does sneak down into the play on the back door, as well as know how to time opportunities as a trailer on the rush. Defensively, Kempny relies on a good stick and awareness Defensively, Kempny relies on a good stick and awareness, as his ability to defend speed isn't quite what it used to be. He's likely to still be on the Kraken shortlist for veteran call-ups, but while he's in Coachella Valley, he's likely one of their big impact players. Lastly, on the defense, let's talk about Riker Evans. Evans' biggest strengths are his skating and hockey sense. He weaponizes both in transition as he breaks down forechecks with precision, timing, and speed. In the offensive zone, he's once again displaying the craftiness that gets him through the neutral zone. Well-timed activations off the blue line. He uses deception to buy time and space for himself and teammates. He's not much of a threat with his shot, but his other abilities leave him on the score sheet often enough. Defensively, he's strong, defending the rush, and physical in defending the cycle. However, his awareness defensively can lapse at times. It wouldn't shock me to see him climb the depth chart of the Firebirds this season, given how translatable his game should be, but I think he starts off maybe outside the top 4, but I think he should be in the top 4. Two other notables on the roster to mention. Let's talk with Petro Sapula. Sapula is a good skater who, like many others on the roster, excels in transition. He's able to retrieve dump-ins and make smart plays under forechecking pressure. He's an above-average playmaker and has some shooting talent and puck skills, but nothing that pops off the page. He's solid in his own defensive end and doesn't shy away from battles in the corners or at the net front. I think he struggles to break out this season as he lacks higher-end tools, but he plays a smart and dependable game that should endear him to the coaching staff. Last skater I want to talk about is Austin Poganski. Poganski is a physical forward who's best served crashing the net. He has good hands in tight. He can finish plays around the net. His puck skills aren't fine-tuned enough for one-on-ones, and his skating keeps him from being a threat on the rush, but he's still a useful offensive player. Defensively, I think he's capable and a good penalty killer, but not a great penalty killer. He's best served in like a middle 6, bottom 9 kind of role where he can be a secondary scorer while he can fill a net front role and chip in some solid defense in the bottom of the lineup. Let's shift over and talk about goalies. Let's start with Joey Decord. Not a great season from Decord in terms of the stat sheet, but I think he's still an intriguing goalie. He reads the play well and anticipates threats. He has good reaction time, solid athleticism. He also plays the puck regularly and has a lot of skill at it. I know a lot of times when you see the goalie leave the net to play the puck, it's kind of a cross your fingers, hold your breath, maybe peek through your eyes kind of moment. But Decord is good. He's like a 6 skater at times with how well he can field dump-ins and make passes. It's not all roses here, unfortunately, though. His positioning has been inconsistent at times. He also looks rattled, like he can't shake off a bad goal here and there. His game is definitely progressing, and I think he's worthy of NHL looks. But given the depth ahead of him, it seems unlikely he breaks on a Seattle's roster this season for more than a cup of coffee. Next, let's talk about Christopher Gibson. Gibson's got in 14 whole games last season in Charlotte. It's concerning that he's only played 18 games in the last 2 seasons, as he's likely to be rusty to start the season with such a limited workload over such a long span. Gibson's pretty average skill set with nothing that really stands out terribly well. He tracks the puck well, he moves well, his athleticism is about average, but nothing that pops off the page. His track record in the AHL is good, but not great. So if nothing else, he should be a dependable, average-ish AHL goaltender, but not necessarily a sexy one. Those are all the skaters for Coachella Valley. Let's pull back a little bit here and talk team as a whole. This team has a lot of dependable veteran talent, as Seattle has opted to have guys like Matty Beniers and Shane Wright start in the NHL, and the rest of the prospect pool isn't quite ready for the AHL yet. A lot of teenagers still that are in juniors or in college or overseas, and Seattle thought it best to keep them where they were, and I tend to agree with that. That bodes well for the Firebirds out of the gate, as they should be a very competitive team. I don't think that Podorowski recaptures the magic he had with Chicago, but True, Linz, and others should have more than enough firepower to get the job done here for the Firebirds on offense. The depth in the bottom of the lineup isn't great, but this looks like a very clear-cut playoff team and one that could press for a division title if some things broke their way. Now, things need to break their way. their younger prospects need to make developmental steps. You're going to need to get some seasons that we maybe didn't see coming from guys like Alexander True. Joey Decord needs to lock the fort down. Christopher Gibson probably needs to do the same, but there's possibility there. It would surprise me, but not shock me to see Coachella Valley, fighting for a division title at the end. I think they're a clear playoff team, but there could be more here. That is our time in Coachella Valley, and that is our time in the Pacific Division. That is it for the show. Thank you for watching and or listening. The Calder Farmstead is part of the Full Press Radio Network. You can listen to this and several other hockey, sports, and sports entertainment programs at www.fullpresscoverage.com. Just click the podcast drop-down menu on the top right portion of the website. That's the podcast list. That's the sound it makes. And enjoy. And if you guys are enjoying the Calder Farmstead, please make sure you subscribe so you get episodes in a timely fashion. Also, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Amazon, please rate and review the podcast. Or if you're watching on YouTube, like the video, comment what you thought of the episode. Doing so actually helps other people find the show, is that when they search for AHL podcast or, AHL on their podcasting platform, shows that have more reviews, shows that have more interaction with their listeners, shows that have more subscribers, get thrown to the top of those lists first, and it makes people more likely to find the show. Also, your reviews, we do read them, we do listen to them, and they help us improve things. You can also follow the show on social media at Calder Farmstead on Twitter, at The Calder Farmstead on Instagram. All of that and more, including the links to our brand new merch store, can be found on our Linktree page at linktr.ee/The Calder Farmstead. Big thanks to Adrian Drake, who made our brand new theme music. You can find him on social media at AD_dysfunction. That's AD_DYSFUNCTION, so we can make music for you too. I'm Sean O'Brien. You can find me on Twitter at Sean O'Brien81. That's SeanObrien81. I'm also on Instagram at Sean O'Brien_81. You can find all of my stats work about the AHL on my Tableau page at bit.ly/data-dump-and-chase, all lowercase, all one word. That is it for the show. From myself, Cece Hockley, the entire team here at Full Press Coverage on the AHL side, thank you for tuning into the show. Please dump and chase responsibly.